05:06.
Oh, 01. You missed it.
Oh, I missed it by a minute.
How is my clock like 5 seconds ahead of yours?
I don't know.
The internet.
Weird. The
Oh,
internet.
5 seconds? Latency,
Yeah.
I guess.
I don't think so.
Either that or you don't have your computer set its clock on the internet time signal. I don't know.
It should do it on the internet.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
I'm double checking right now because I'm curious.
The whole gang is here. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Shall we play some music to that crunching?
Everybody get their recorders ready, by the way.
Oh, good point.
Mine's ready.
Mine's ready. Yeah, now I'm recording. Uh-oh.
My clapperboard is ready. My clapperboard is ready for 344. With
my
Captain Jeff and
recorder
Captain
just
Slick.
quit. Why did that happen?
What happened?
I clicked on the recorder and it quit. Hold on. Sorry, it's back.
Something always happens when we start recording recorders for some reason.
Mine's recording.
Oh, because it wants to install a new version of Audio Hijack.
Ah.
No. Don't install.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Nev. I did get my hair cut. Hey, Pip. Hello, Neil, James, Stephen Ivy. Back from Oshkosh. Mike Kuipers. Hello, sir.
Back from camping under his airplane's wing. How romantic is that?
Oh. Paul Verhagen. Hello, sir. In Cincinnati.
It's the other Queen City.
Yes. Oh, is Cincinnati a Queen City as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it is.
I know. Charlotte makes more sense, right?
Yes.
Charlotte was a queen, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we know anybody in Sarasota?
Hope not.
I'll be there Friday.
I just miss you. I have 20 hours there tomorrow. I'm coming out Thursday.
Oh, there's a really good barbecue. Well, I don't know if you're going to be in your eating cycle or not, but there's a great barbecue place there.
Which one?
Not the one that everybody always thinks of. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, if not, just let me know because I won't go there. I'm fasting today and into tomorrow, but as soon as I get there, then I'm going to be done with my fast.
Okay. Nancy's is the place everybody talks about, but the place that I think it's called it's called Bricks. BRICK.
Bricks.
Bricks Smoked Meats. And it's authentic Central Texas style barbecue, and they basically have smoked prime brisket.
And
it's amazing. Bricks.
Isn't that the place right on downtown?
Yeah, it's like one block south of the main drag.
Okay,
it's really good. I'm going to have to visit there, I think.
I'm tired.
Okay, Nick, we'll start the show.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I caught the hint.
So it's Bricks Prime Barbecue.
Yeah.
You can talk
I don't know. I think no.
I'm going to go to bed.
Bricks Smoked Meats.
The smoked meat set.
All right. Let's see. Let me start the recorder. Boom. By the way, I have not turned off the MacBook Pro yet. That's still running.
Still on.
Still on. Still working.
Good for you.
It's on across the
my EFB is working. It worked fine today and yesterday. And it's controlling the digital mixer, so I think it's okay. All right. So everybody got their recorders recording?
Recording.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Here's the pace. 3, 2, 1.
I'm the only one on the road today.
Yeah. I'm glad we're able to do it today so I don't have to lug all the gear on my 4-day trip leaving tomorrow. So thank you, everybody, for making that possible.
Works good for me.
Worked for me.
Good. Okay. Let's see. Let me play something. Make sure I have all the audio routing situated.
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
Okay. We're getting good crunching. We're getting good
Really
crunching.
crunchy sounding.
That is, well, that's what happens when you eat pigs.
Okay. Yeah.
You are just mean, Nick. Very, very mean.
No, I'm not. I mean, you cook them, for heaven's sake.
Okay. Bum, bum, bum. I think we're ready to go. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, we're ready to go. All right. Wait a minute. Why is it not working? Record. Oh, shoot. Let's do the clack one more time. Ready with the
That
clackers?
quickly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Hold on.
stopped
Okay.
the recorder to check
Had to
something.
retrieve it.
Okay, ready. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Why is this not working?
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
Dang it. Take 3.
WAPG, it's the airline pilot guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 334.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in a northern Atlanta suburb. Today's show was recorded on the 31st of July, 2018.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy. Would you mind is flying by with the airline pilot guy.
In today's episode, turtle smuggling, inflatable sex doll flying, pilots fighting, more news, your feedback, and this week's plane tale, the Aluminum Trail. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. Flight 334 is ready for pushback.
Aluminium.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guys Show. I'm Captain Jeff, a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier. And joining me today on this aviation podcasting extravaganza is, from her lakeside studio in South Carolina, a doctor, skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, that's me. Hey, Captain Jeff. Good to see you. Had a nice little break for a week or so there. And glad to be back doing another show today. Good to see you guys.
Great to see you as well.
Oh, and
also,
Nick, it's aluminum.
and joining us from a studio in England, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, current captain for an international airline based in London, Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff, and all this aluminium that's going on, and the correct pronunciation is aluminium, and you guys latched on to an incorrect spelling and pronunciation. That was not the discoverer's intent, and for some reason you've hung on to it. What is that?
I don't know, but we're going to introduce contestant number 3 or 4, depending on how you count it, from his hotel studio in Richmond, Virginia. Barbecue master, bourbon connoisseur, motorcycle riding, pontoon boat skipper, and captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Well, hello, everybody. Great to be back on another great show of APG. Looking forward to a fun afternoon.
We're looking forward to it as well. And as I take a sip of my aluminum canned drink.
And speaking of that, we have to add scotch to that list.
To what?
The list, bourbon and scotch.
Oh,
connoisseur.
bourbon and scotch. Okay. well,
Vodka, actually vodka, bourbon, and scotch connoisseur.
all right.
I'm just, just crazy.
Just heavy drinking captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier.
No, appreciative of finer things in life.
So yeah, the plaintail today is was spelled aluminium, the Aluminium Trail. But I started listening to it, and it deals with pretty much all American stuff. And so I thought, this should be aluminum because that's the way we pronounce it here.
Yeah, but you do pronounce it wrong. Let me just make that point.
I mean, I can. There is an argument to be made. I have to agree, but that's just the way we mispronounce it, apparently. But I thought it would be appropriate to.
Yeah, it was a mistake in Webster's. They latched onto a very early version of the spelling,
Oh.
and even when the correct spelling and pronunciation became common throughout the world, Webster's for some reason didn't change it, and so in the
Because the guy
1910s,
the guy who named it
20s
changed it twice over the course of 5 years.
So yeah, but he initially decided it was going to be aluminium because he said that all the iniums they're fantastic materials, and I want this to be like those. So it falls in line. Aluminum, there's no history to that. There's no background. There's no anyway, whatever.
He
Well-
tried. I'll have you know, he tried aluminum first.
Yeah, he did. But once he settled on aluminium, you guys refused to follow him, and it was his damned in discovery, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, that's because.
Well, thanks for
that
joining
ship
us
had
today
sailed.
on the precious metals,
Metallurgy.
metallurgy
I don't know
show.
It's a precious metal.
Yeah, it's all Webster's fault.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are we over that yet? Or are we
No,
still,
I don't think so.
We'll
Not
bring
by
it back
a
up
long
later.
shot.
more.
I'm sure.
We're going to have a go at potato and tomato before long.
Excellent.
Tomato.
potato? How about
Let's call the
Potable.
whole thing off.
Potable.
potable?
Potable.
All right. Well, it's good to be back home. We had a grand time over in the UK, and I'm sure we'll mention that a time or two on today's show. But everybody is now back in their regular lives, and we're kind of resuming our normal schedule, I hope. I do apologize first off for taking so long to get out or publish the last episode, 333. I had some other things going on in my personal life, and I just could not focus on anything but that. And so it took me a lot longer to get the audio all edited and all the stuff that I do to publish stuff. So thank you, everyone, for your patience regarding that. But we should be back to a normal schedule here soon. And let's see, the MacBook, if you watched 333, especially looked at the pre-show video, I have it marked in the show notes from the last show. If you haven't seen it, you need to look at it because we're dubbing it the Great Beer Spill of 2018. And that was a lot of fun. But so far, the MacBook 15-inch is still running. And so
Fantastic.
I think we dodged a bullet there. That was a lot
Well,
of fun.
That's good. As much as I know you'd maybe like a new laptop.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Might have been a good excuse.
Yeah, well, it's going to die eventually, so it's still working okay. Excuse
By
me.
the way, aluminium was the accepted spelling in the USA until 1925. Why did you change? I mean, you had it right. What's wrong with you guys?
We just like to be different.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
You're just not going to let it go, are you? Okay. Now, getting back to our intro section here. Let's see. I have some notes regarding, let's see, the last time that you saw us or heard us on the show, we were recording at in the conservatory at Nicholas and Jilly's wonderful home in Liss, Hampshire. And then the next day we went to the Farnborough International Air Show, met up with a whole bunch of great people there. And that evening, Saturday night, we headed over to the Sarson Stones pub, and a huge turnout. It was a
great night.
Yeah.
Fantastic night.
And we decided to just not do a recording because it would have taken an hour and a half of the show, I'm sure, if we had done so. So we decided just
I think we basically
enjoy
took
it.
over the entire place.
Yeah, we did.
We
I
did.
mean, everywhere
yeah.
you turned around, there was APG
Yeah,
listeners.
APG t-shirts everywhere. It was a
Yes.
swamp of them. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. And got to meet a lot of folks, new folks that I hadn't met before, and got to talk with people that I had met in the past as well again. So great time. Really enjoyed that. And then the next day, Dana and I headed home for the US of A, and don't really want to talk much about that. I made some poor decisions on choosing what way I should get home. You know, the first flight was great, but the rest of it took me about 4
there
hours.
was a lot
longer.
of debate leading up to this too, wasn't there, about which
There
flights
was.
might be ideal? Uh-huh.
I should have, what I should have done in hindsight is just hung around Heathrow for another, 4 hours or whatever, 3 hours, and then just taken the nonstop to Atlanta. And I would have been home about 4 hours earlier than I actually got home.
Yeah. I thought the
I
best way
tried
was
to-
going to Detroit.
I did. In all fairness, I did try to warn you.
Well, you warned me not to take that flight because of payload optimization or something.
Well, yeah, payload optimization, but then I warned you before you went for the Boston flight after I looked at the weather and knew it was coming through there as to not the reason why you shouldn't go to Boston.
Well, I pretty much had you on permanent ignore by that point because I wasn't sure if you were trying to help me or trying.
I was
not
trying to
me.
help you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I ended up going from Boston to Raleigh-Durham and then Raleigh-Durham to Atlanta.
And how'd you end up going to Raleigh-Durham?
Oh, you suggested that I maybe
That's
look
right.
at some other places because you felt bad about screwing me and making me go through Boston.
Yeah, sure.
Just kidding. Anyway, as I said, we're not going to talk about that. Well, we just did, didn't we? Sorry.
Mhm.
And let's see what else. So, Steph, you went home on Monday, I believe.
Yep, I went home on Monday. I had a very
Y'all went to back to the Farnborough International Air Show on Sunday, right?
I did.
Okay.
And Nick did not. But I went back and I did a quick show with the guys from Plain Talking UK. So we did that up in the media center. They were nice enough to let us sit in there and record a quick show. And we had some special guests for that. And they've published that. So go check out their website and you can watch all of that there. And it sounds like I came very close to actually seeing a couple of our other listeners who were only at the show on Sunday, but somehow managed to miss both of them. So my apologies to those folks. You know who you are. I've talked to you both already. So next time, 2 years, probably. We'll see.
Hey, don't feel bad, whoever that was, because Steph has stood us up before as well.
Oh,
so-
yeah.
That's
all
true.
the
But that
time
was on
for-
purpose.
Oh, that
And
makes me feel so much better.
I was just about dead, so I just needed to let my body rest for a day. I think if I'd taken it out and another trip to Farnborough, I would have pegged it there and there in the media center.
It was a great week and a half for me, but I'm telling you, a lot of warm weather and air show, sunshine, and lots of drinking.
Yeah, lots of drinking, lots of eating.
drinking. So it was kind of nice to finally
To get
be
back.
done with all that.
I had a lovely flight on the way back. Thanks for asking. My direct flight back to Charlotte, not delayed at all, and actually ended up having a little bit of a contest or a race with Captain Al, unbeknownst to our respective flight crews and or anyone else except for who we were sharing it with on Twitter. But we had nearly identical arrival times. He was going from Dublin to Chicago O'Hare to then go on to Oshkosh. And I was flying obviously from Heathrow to Charlotte. And our arrival times were very, very, very similar. A matter of minutes in between the two. So we kind of started a little competition there. And I'm happy to say I ended up winning by almost 15 minutes in the end.
That
So
was
my
very
thanks-
entertaining. I
My
was
thanks
watching
to
that.
the folks at the Charlotte Douglas Airport who turned the airport around just in time for us to have a straight in landing, not have to do any vectoring around. And my thanks to American Airlines for having that gate empty too, since we were a little bit early.
Man, Steph has so much pull, especially
know.
with
She
the
does.
people in the
I'm
Charlotte
convinced that
area.
they knew it was going on and they helped us out behind the scenes.
I think on Twitter they call her an influencer.
I think you're right,
And
actually.
I think she probably gets about, $800,000 a tweet or something.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, Steph.
And
Was,
she has a-
was I not supposed to mention that?
She has an IPA named after her.
I
Did you get
know.
a chance to try that stuff?
I did. I got a chance to go up to
Woohoo.
Ghostface
The
Brewing.
painkiller?
That's the pain reliever.
Pain reliever. Sorry.
Yes. Went up to Ghostface Brewing on, gosh, when was that? Last Friday. That was the 27th, I believe, of July. I met up there with Mark Lebrowski, one of our listeners who's up there in the Lake Norman area. And it's friends of his who run the brewery and are the guys, the head brewer there. So my thanks to them for putting all of that together and naming it for me and doing a really fine job of making a very, very, very nice IPA. Had a couple of pints of it there. And then I brought home a growler, which I will probably be cracking into in the next day or two to enjoy some more of.
Presumably they chucked lots of tropical fruit in it for you, did they?
This one was not terribly fruity. I think you would have enjoyed it.
Okay, well, good. Excellent. Well, I look forward to it.
Well, I don't think there's going to be any left by the time you're
Probably
able
not.
to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't bottle any of it, did they?
No, there was, I think, a question of maybe we could get some cans of it, but
No.
I don't
You
think it'll be.
should have brought a growler with you.
Yeah, I have a growler.
Oh, it's full.
Yeah.
Full of that.
It is now, but I bet that within the next 2-3 days, it won't be.
Well, they don't last forever in the growler. So
And once you open it up, you need
Yeah.
to drink it.
Drink.
Yeah.
Drink.
Oh,
drink,
one thing you
drink.
did forget to mention, Jeff, is that flight from Boston to Boston. The entertainment system was in-op.
Yeah, but
Oh.
that didn't bother me at all. I had several electronic devices that I used to.
Or you had
Look.
room for your electronic devices.
Yeah. Yep, I did. I would have had room.
I see where he's going with this.
I would have had
Where
room
were you
if
sitting,
yeah.
Dana?
I had a Comfort
None.
Plus.
Who
I
were you
would have
sitting
had
beside?
plenty of room with my iPad.
You don't understand. There was a lady that is big, if not bigger than me, sitting in the seat next to me
Mhm.
that took up all of her seat and about a quarter of my seat.
You didn't
And I
have
didn't
a,
even get one visit from the guy that was sitting in business class.
well, I
I
don't.
had no light. I couldn't even read because with the entertainment system down, the screens throughout the entire airplane were down. I had no way of turning on my reading light. Couldn't even read. Couldn't get the internet, and couldn't watch anything. So I sat there with my body halfway into the aisle because I was pushed out there, and got hit by every time the flight attendants came by. Took me 4 days to recover from going over to London.
This was a Boeing, was it?
It was.
No comment.
You know what I need to do? I need to get a sound clip of like a baby crying or something.
I'm not crying. Hey, if
Just
I,
a really
didn't, if I
sad
didn't give you
silence.
that recommendation, you would have been stuck in coach.
I owe my life to you, man. Thank you so much for everything
Yep.
that you did for me.
The world's smallest violin. That's what you need, Jeff.
Yep.
Anyway, Nick, well, you didn't have a flight home, so
No, I
never
didn't.
mind.
I just had to recover from your lovely visit,
Yes.
which dealt my liver a severe blow. But luckily, most of it's still going, so that's fine. No, I've had a fairly quiet time. Got some good news from the docs. I've got my medical back. So that's TIC-VG. I'm just waiting for them to decide what they're going to do in the way of refresher training. Because my sims that I last flew are coming out of recency, and of course I haven't sat in the cockpit for ages, so I don't think it's probably appropriate for me to go just climb in an airplane. I need to get some recency and learn about a bunch of new procedures which have been introduced. So not exactly looking forward to going into the sim, but it'll all be good in the end, I'm sure.
Well, speaking of flying, Dana, I noticed that you're actually on a trip. So was it hard, or did you have to remind yourself which seat to sit in when you got into the cockpit, or was there any trouble at all remembering how to fly?
Lots of trouble. Just it's been too long. I mean, it's just the airplane did something freaky, as the MD-88 has a tendency of doing, and I kind of looked at it, and it took me a few seconds to realize what was going on. But it's really good to be back in the air. I'm flying with a fantastic first officer who's taking really good care of me, and I can't tell you how much I've missed being out here flying. And today was my first day of the 3-day trip. I'm here in Richmond, and it was a relatively, all right, I'm going to say this because I'm going to jinx myself. I'm knocking on wood. Here's me knocking on wood. Today was an relatively good day. It's my first trip that I've actually had that I didn't have a problem so far. So it's nice to be out there and being the guy in charge, setting the tone, and a couple of really good A-line flight attendants, the person that's in charge, or the purser. So really good to work with them. And just a overall smooth operation. Actually left out of New Orleans. So they closed the door 10 minutes early. So
Nice.
we just looked at each other and said, "Wow, they're ready to roll here," and even the ramp was ready. So it was crazy. So we waited until we got our pre-pushback messages, and then we were on our way. And then taxiing out, they gave us an 8-minute time frame to get airborne. So I mean, it was just like everything was clicking right along. So it was really, honestly, one of the better days I can remember in recent memory of being out there flying.
Until the hotel van didn't show up.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay positive, Jeff, because my trip back and forth to London, although being in London was absolutely fantastically awesome to be with all the APG listeners and, of course, the crew members getting to and from, I'm just not going to complain. So I'm trying to stay positive. And so anything that has to do with getting transportation, all right, so I'll go into it. Call the hotel. And, of course, we arrived, believe it or not, 5 minutes early, and we were just about curbside about the time we should have been normally there, about 5 minutes after arrival, 5-10 minutes after arrival, and no hotel van. That's what with us is very unusual. Usually, especially with downtown transportation, it's usually a transportation company, and they're always there waiting on us. And so we get out there, and I call and said, "This is such and such crew. We're Acme, and we're looking for a hotel shuttle. Be 25-30 minutes. The hotel shuttle hasn't left the hotel downtown." So, well, that's not acceptable. We're kind of on a shorter overnight, and that's certainly beyond normal wait time. And I said, "Well, what about a taxi?" And they said, "Okay, go ahead and get a taxi." I said, "Will you direct bill it?" And they said, "Absolutely." So when we get there, which it only took about 5 minutes to get a taxi, when we got to the hotel, I said, "Well, just out of curiosity, this is our normal scheduled arrival time, and you're our new hotel in Richmond. Is there a particular reason why you didn't have the van there, even though, with a normal operation?" "Yeah, we don't have any staff to come pick you up." Excuse me? So it worked out okay. But I would imagine that they need to work on their staffing issue, because if it's a regularly scheduled arrival time and they don't have anybody to pick us up, that's going to be a problem.
Well, you got there, though. That's the good thing.
Got here, and I specifically, there was, I think it was 6 3-day trips that were in open time. Open time being, from like when Jeff pulls or picks up extra flying, he goes to open time or swaps things. So it's available trips that are out there to be flown. So I went to open time, and I saw that there was no question that I was going to be flying. I was number 3 on call out of on the list of the people that were available, and there was 6 trips. So I knew I was going to go. So we can put in what's called a yellow slip, and I can preference based on if my seniority hold it, a particular trip, and I saw this trip, and of the trips, this was the only trip that allowed me to get in early enough today anywhere to be a part of the podcast. So I, of course, preference this, and I end up with a 20-hour Sarasota layover tomorrow, as long as I get to go to it. And so I'm looking forward to that as well. So it worked out really well. And, you know, the only real big question mark is the weather in the Southeast is supposed to be, as Dr. Seth alluded to earlier, and is that the weather in the Southeast is going to be kind of cruddy the next several days. So I'm hoping it doesn't affect us too bad, especially flying, as Jeff has talked about in the past, prefer to fly in the morning. And that's what I'm doing. So you can stay away from most of the afternoon weather.
Yeah, but even lately, the morning has still been not free of that kind of weather. So
Current,
Again, I'm trying to be
radar.
positive and
yeah,
optimistic.
me too, because I got to fly tomorrow as well. So. Yes, Steph, you're holding up something on your phone.
Oh, you know, just current radar for the
Yeah,
southeastern
ooh,
U.S.
very colorful.
Nice.
That's very colorful.
Yeah. Well, you know, we all need rain, right?
Especially California. Let's send it to
Yeah.
them because we don't need any more.
Now we just need to. How's the UK doing, Nick? Have you gotten enough rain yet?
Oh, we had a couple of days of pretty heavy rain, so some big storms, and then yesterday was constant, all-day rain. So the garden's perking up nicely. Thank you very much. And we're
Everything's
back
greening
to relatively grading up nicely. We're back to relatively dry and clear skies again. So looking forward to a very pleasant rest of the week, actually.
We're going green. We're going green.
Getting green.
We're gonna take care of the earth. We're going green.
I'll be mowing the lawn religiously.
Oh, you mean your little robot thing?
I've been mowing the lawn.
What?
I set that off.
Using your remote control robot?
Using
Yeah,
your
mowing the
iPhone?
lawn, he means he sits there and he watches it go back and forth with a beverage in hand, and
It's
when
hard
it gets
work.
stuck, when it
It
gets
is.
stuck, you know, running into a corner or something, he
Oh,
just
the
turns it
darn
around.
it. Gotta go back
I
out there
have
and-
certain standards.
Yeah,
I
we
knew
feel
that's what
sorry
was
for you.
going on there, okay.
Good. I should think so too.
Hey, you know what? So, you know, we went to, well, Nick and I and Nigel and Captain Al and Pip went to 2 air shows in the UK, back to back, the RIAT and the Farnborough International Air Show. Here in the United States, a very large air show is held every year up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Lake Winnebago. They call it the EAA Air Venture. And a lot of folks from our aviation community were up there having a great time, getting together and spending time with each other, looking at all kinds of great airplanes and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And we received some audio feedback from said group of people. And I have, I think, at least 3 audio feedbacks to play regarding the happenings up in Wisconsin. So you want to listen to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Here we go.
G'day, it's Glenn here from Oshkosh 18. Another fantastic week here at the Mecca of Aviation. Too many aircraft to mention, too many friends to mention. It's been another great year. Sorry about that, that's Jagan just going past in his Beach 18. The guy is he's black and red Beach 18. It's doing another great aircraft display. It's just worth every second. About to do an interview with a guy who flew in a T6 Harvard from the New Zealand Air Force. So that should be interesting. And I've just got a T6 taxiing past me. So it's a cool place. It really is. Anyway, if you haven't been here before, you do have to come here and meet up with people like Dispatcher Mike and Jen and lots of other APG listeners. So I'll probably do some more feedback before the end of the week. Today's Wednesday. Tonight is the night flying show, so that should be interesting. Anyway, okay, Glenn out.
Great background sounds there. And Glenn also sent us one more.
Syndrome stuff is Captain Jeff, Steph, Captain Dana. It's Glenn from New Zealand.
The first part of it got cut off. So anyway.
And this is a hard recording to make. Oshkosh is over now, and saying goodbye to everyone. Yeah, it's been great. Been really good year. It's all about the people. Oh, definitely the people. I mean, the air show itself was good. It was good. Everything, it wasn't outstanding like some years have been too, but it's definitely the friends that I make here that I've made over the years coming to Oshkosh and through the APG syndrome. Yeah, it is really. I mean, it's great. The number of friends I've seen, the new friends I've made this year as well through social media, Instagram, and things like that. It's been great. Really has been great. And let's do it all again next year. And hopefully the air show might seem more outstanding this year. Yeah, I missed a few things I would like to see, like that meteor, that Gloucester meteor flying. So, well, I mean, yeah, let's and great to meet Captain Al. Really. No, he's such a good, nice guy. And his dad's a great guy too. Apparently he flew competitions in New Zealand. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So yeah, let's hope more APG people come over next year. Like Al was saying before, we really need to get lots of APGs. Now I know Farmer's not on next year, so you guys have you don't have much excuse this year not to come over. And we need to get people from the PT UK as well. Matt and Carlos as well to come over. Anyway, well, that's it really. I can't think of anything else. I'm just about ready to, if I keep on talking, I'll get really quite upset. So, all good. Okay, that's it. Goodbye, USA. See you next year. Glenn out.
Glenn, hang in there. Keep it together, man. That was nice. Thank you for sending in that feedback. By the way, Mike Carroll's, the dispatcher Mike, the Flying and Life host, Flying and Life podcast, pretty much the podcast of record for the EAA AirVenture. I mean, are there any others that cover it so well? In the latest episode, he had Glenn on for a couple of segments. Glenn was recording some stuff for Mike. And he mentioned it in his first piece of audio feedback, the Harvard, the T6 from New Zealand that was there at Oshkosh, and he interviewed the gentleman that was flying it. Yeah, very interesting stuff. So please check out Flying and Life podcast. Speaking of...
I reckon,
yes?
Sorry, I was just going to say, getting a Harvard to Oshkosh from New Zealand must have been a story just in its own right. I wonder how the hell they did it.
I think the airplane actually has been here in the U.S. for a number of years. The guy that owns it, bought it and owns it, is a retired American Airlines pilot. And so, I don't know how long it's been here in the States, but it is one of those that was in New Zealand. And then when they put it up for surplus back in, I think, the 70s, trying to recall exactly the details regarding it. It was purchased and flown back.
Gotcha.
Back then. So yeah. Anyway, and then finally, speaking of the devil, dispatcher Mike, Flying in Life podcast, he sent us in some feedback as well. So I'm going to go ahead and play that right now.
Captain Jeff, crew, and APG community. It's Dispatcher Mike here. I'm in Oshkosh. I went to the Lifetime dinner yesterday, and I ran into
Brandon Lovejoy.
I ran into Brandon, and I sat down at the table, and him and his wife were just sitting there, and I'm like, well, I'll sit here with these people so they're not alone. And then we started talking, and then he ended up and realized who I was, which was the first time ever someone in public has said, oh, you're Dispatcher Mike. I know who you are. And I'm like, you do? And so we had a great time at the Lifetime dinner. And Brandon, tell me a little bit about how you got here, what you fly, and what you're doing here at Oshkosh.
I got here by driving. I live on the other side of Wisconsin. And while I'm here, I'm hanging out in the ultralight section a lot. I fly both airplanes and paramotors. And so today we did a mass arrival. We drove about 10 miles out of town or out from the airport, and then flew our paramotors using the ultralight approach into Oshkosh.
What is a paramotor?
Paramotor is a 2-stroke engine that you wear on your back, and then you wear a harness that connects you up to a paraglider, and you run into the air and then fly it like an airplane, sort of.
So you basically have a 2-stroke engine connected to a pusher propeller, and you have a little fabric seat that you sit on, and your feet just dangle?
They do. It's like a lawn chair in the sky.
Okay. How do you control it? Are there controls like a yoke, or do you kind of shift weight, or how does it fly that way?
It's a combination of shifting your weight and then also using brake toggles that go up to the trailing edge of the wing. And that pulls down on the side of the wing that correlates to the side you're pulling on. And then you kind of get a little bit of a bank that way and can get pretty sharp turns going.
Now, these are the same things that the Paradigm Air Show team flies, correct?
It is, yes.
So is there any difference between like your paramotor and their paramotor?
For the wing, there's a pretty big difference between what I fly and what a lot of them fly. I fly an intermediate wing, which has a little bit more stability in flight. So if you hit turbulence, it kind of rides through it a little bit more nicely. If you turn, it won't let you turn as hard as a more advanced wing will. And they fly very advanced wings that let them do all of the exciting things that they do up there.
Are there beginner wings?
There are. Everyone starts on a beginner wing. They use a rating system that's A, B, C, and D. A being a beginner wing, D being the most advanced wing. I fly a C wing. Beginners would start on A, and typically they'll get maybe, depending on the person, 5 to 10 flights. Those you have to put a lot of pressure on the brakes to get it to do a very shallow turn. So to get something like a pilot-induced oscillation is a lot more difficult with that. And then you kind of progress from there. For me as an airplane pilot, coming into it, it was more difficult. I would get myself into little oscillations a little bit at the beginning because it's more like a pendulum. You turn to the right and then you let off of the brake and it just levels you back out. You don't have to give it any left control at all. So that's kind of a change of pace.
So you're a lifetime member of the EAA, as am I. That's why we met at the lifetime dinner last night. Why did you choose to become a lifetime member?
I really like what the organization does. I think a big thing for the future of the thing that we love is getting younger people involved. They've got the Young Eagles that really focuses heavily on that, and they're continuously trying to improve what they do with that. And then they put on great advocacy efforts. And they're overall probably my favorite aviation organization.
I would say I could pretty much agree with that. So Brandon, you sent some feedback a while ago to the APG show. Or what was that, and what was your response, and how well received did you take that advice?
My question for Jeff at the time was about my flight instructor when I was first getting started. I had an instructor that was getting ready for retirement, and he was no longer as interested in doing the instructing as he once was, in my opinion. So he wasn't as, I guess, interested overall in the whole process. And so I asked Jeff if I was just being a wimp and if I should just power through with this instructor, or if I should try out different instructors, what's appropriate. He recommended that I try out some other instructors, see if somebody meshes with my style. Be sure to find somebody that you're comfortable with, that you get along with, and that their style works well with yours. And I did that, and I found an excellent instructor and finished up my private license with him. And he taught me a lot of different ways of looking at things, different than what my first instructor taught me. And so now I kind of know multiple ways that different people look at the same problem or the same way of doing things. And it worked out great.
Are you going to go on and get an instrument rating?
I want to. I was saving money for it, and then Paramotors came along, and my instrument rating fund kind of went in a different direction.
So to Jeff and the community, this is Dispatcher Mike here with Brandon from sunny Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I honestly think you guys need to come here next year. There's no Farnborough next year, so why don't we make it a 2019 Oshkosh big APG event? Just putting it out there.
Well, thank you, Mike. You know what? The best part of that, all those audio feedbacks was
The background noise.
yes.
Yeah. So thank you guys for taking the time to record and say interesting things. I'm sure what you said was quite
we-
riveting. We were just listening to the airplanes in the background the whole time. That's
Yeah.
the
Did
truth of
anybody
it.
say anything anywhere?
Yeah, what were they
I'm
talking about
not
anyway?
sure.
No, thank you. I mean, I wasn't sure exactly where that was going with Brandon. I'm thinking, I hope we didn't give him any bad advice.
I was trying to remember what his feedback was. I was like, oh man, I have no idea. Turns
Yeah.
out sounds like it was good advice.
So that was one of those times when we were in the upwards of 50% or better category.
Indeed.
So anyway, yeah, it sounded like a great time over at Oshkosh. And you know what? I think all of your suggestions that we make it a big APG or aviation podcast meetup might be taken very, very seriously. We're really talking about making or being present next year for Oshkosh. So that should be a lot of fun. And we're even thinking, or I was thinking, and I think everybody agrees it would be a lot of fun, getting one of those really nice, big, giant RVs, rent one of those suckers, and find a place in the RV camping area. And
Coffee fund, Jeff. Coffee fund.
Yeah, we really
Send your donations in now if you want
need more contributions.
Yeah, Oshkosh next year. That's airlinepilotguy.com.
There we go. Yeah, it's airlinepilotguy.com/coffee, please.
Oh, coffee. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Wow. You think
that's
I
all
know that?
But so here's the deal. If any of you listening to this, and I'm sure many of you listening have been up at Oshkosh and know their way around. If you know some information regarding renting RVs and securing a spot in the RV parking area, camping area, let us know. Send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com or directly to me, Jeff @airlinepilotguy.com. Yeah, because we apparently need to get going on that pretty quickly because things start filling up pretty fast. So
Well, I just went over to the EAA's website, and it has the dates for 2019 and all the information up for planning your trip. So I guess that might be a good place to start.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we're looking for some some
Insider
info. Yeah.
So all you experts.
We'll want to do it upright. I mean, even get the RV painted with the Airline Pilot Guy show logo. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, that's kind of, especially if it's a rental, they may frown down upon that.
Yeah, we'll
Really?
turn it
Possibly.
with
Possibly.
Just get a big
Oh, wait a
sign.
minute. That might be my
Funny.
next toy I can buy.
There you
they'll,
go.
just see it as an improvement, I'm sure.
Yeah, Dana, I have kids in college. You have money to spend on the RV.
You get that right. I've always wanted one.
Well, let's talk. Anyway, so thanks everyone for. And by the way, Jen was there. She's a great blogger. Tales from the Tarmac.
Terminal.
I'm sorry, terminal. Tales from the Tarmac is a different one. It's not as good. Trust me.
It's kind of a parody account, I'm sure.
Terminal.
Yeah, Tales from the Terminal. That's an electrical podcast.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, I was a little envious listening to all the fun that everybody was having up there, and we are definitely going to be there next year. So it's official. We'll be there.
I've always suggested maybe an APG tent.
Oh, Ivor,
I think we can probably do better than that.
come on! This is the APG show. We don't do tents.
We're very intense.
Anyway, well, we might have to do that, but we'll see.
That'll be our backup plan.
I was going
Wow.
through some stuff, looking at some of the feedback that we covered on the last show, and somebody had sent us some feedback asking about smoking in the cockpit. I think we kind of took a tangent there when we were answering the questions, talking about smoking in the back of the airplane, and kind of briefly talked a little bit about smoking in the cockpit. But one of the things that came to mind after the show was finished was the fact that when I flew the C-141 Starlifter, great airplane made by Lockheed, the only place that you could smoke on the airplane was the cockpit. And most pilots pretty much just the pilots. Most of us didn't smoke, but the engineers / scanners and the load masters and any other enlisted folks that we had on board with us, if we were carrying them, would come up to the cockpit to smoke. And it was like a smoking lounge up there in the cockpit. It was really, really bad, smoky. That's one of the things I really did not like about that airplane was the fact that it was always smoke filled up in the cockpit. But
Well, you should have just kicked them out.
well, I'd rather have them up there smoking than smoking in the back illicitly and then catching something on fire. So, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just wanted to, I made a note of that here in the intro notes. Just wanted to mention that. Anything else to mention in the beginning of the show here before we move on with the coffee fund? The coffee/RV fund?
Might be temporarily renamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we pick this RV up from LA or somewhere like that I can fly to and then drive it over?
LA to
LA?
Wisconsin? I think we can find
Can't
somewhere.
you go to
closer.
Atlanta?
Yeah, can't you go
Can't
nonstop
you go to
into
Detroit?
Atlanta?
Oh, come on, guys, it'd be an adventure. We could make a road trip.
You know how far
holiday.
away Los Angeles
LA is
from
from-
No,
Wisconsin?
he does not.
Not a clue.
Excellent. Too far to
Look
drive.
Not close.
Ah, your
You
wishes.
have to go over the Continental Divide.
Well, that'd be
It's
an
a-
adventure in itself,
Twice.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
Don't
All right.
you remember? I
How about
rode
San
across.
Francisco then?
I rode across this
Not
country
any
on a
better.
motorcycle. I know what it's like to go across this country. You need
Although,
a week each way.
you could do it from San Francisco just on I-80 in about 3.5 days.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Well, maybe it'll be a great adventure. We'll take a look at logistics.
Can't we
See,
just meet up in Chicago and drive from there?
that's what I was thinking.
Milwaukee?
Chicago/Milwaukee.
Well, we don't fly to Milwaukee.
Well,
You find in
What
Chicago,
do you mean? You got to go somewhere that Acme Red goes to.
Chicago.
Chicago.
Uh,
I'm not quite sure if we go to Chicago anymore.
hey, it's time for the coffee fund.
Excellent.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the big giant APG RV. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. All right. The Coffee Fund is your way to help us fund Oshkosh 2019 and our RV. And information about how you can do that is found at our website. And since the last program, the last episode, we have some classic fund contributors: Jeffrey Pemberton, Deanna Tickle, and Nicholas Chaco. And they use, as I mentioned, the classic method, PayPal. You can make a one-time or recurring donation via that vehicle. And the other way to support the show and the Coffee Fund, be part of the Coffee Fund cadre, is via Patreon. And we have 2 new producers since the last episode: Eric Intilli and Ron Steele. Again, you should help us out if you have the resources to do so. Become part of our Coffee Fund cadre. Head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did, and we'll be even gladder. Thank you.
Stand by for news.
All right, first up in the news folder, we have this story from the New York Post, NewYorkPost.com. Flight attendants to be deported over turtle smuggling operation. 2 Chinese flight attendants turned turtle smugglers were ordered booted from the U.S. on Monday, according to a report. The Chinese Eastern Airlines workers had been secretly stashing dozens of legally protected spotted and box turtles in pillowcases and carry-on luggage to smuggle them from Los Angeles to China, where they would cash in on them on the black market, authorities said. The turtles' colorful shells are believed to bring good luck in China, and their meat supposedly increases sexual prowess when eaten. rogue flight attendants. And I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce their names. They're Chinese, and they don't look easy to pronounce. Anyway, 41 and 31 years old, respectively, were suspected of having carried out their scheme for a while, prosecutors said. But their luck ran out on May 12th when one of their luggage was scanned by a TSA inspector in Los Angeles who just happened to be a turtle aficionado, authorities said. The TSA worker at Los Angeles International Airport noticed unusual round objects in Q's carry-on bags and realized they were the reptiles based on his enthusiasm for turtles as a teenager, court documents show. The flight attendants were found to have 31 spotted turtles, and 14 box turtles between them at the time. They must not be
How
very big.
Do you even carry that many
I don't know.
Do you have any other luggage with you? Like any other clothing? I guess not.
No,
Apparently
I
not.
guess they're
Probably all
tiny.
babies.
But, yeah.
Oh yeah, maybe if they were
All babies.
recently
Wow.
hatched turtles.
Yeah. Are you a turtle aficionado, Dana?
I am not, but I've taken a lot of pictures of turtles under the water.
Oh, okay.
And, any turtle that I've ever seen of adult nature is always, it's a very big turtle. So even the turtles that you see in lakes tend to be at least the size of a plate. So
Yeah, the turtles in our lake are pretty large. I'm trying
Yeah.
to imagine 45 turtles in luggage.
yeah, so it had to have been babies. And I mean, to me, as an appreciative person of what we have in nature and the beauty that it is, especially in the water, it's pretty offensive to me that people would be doing this.
Well, they
Yeah.
pleaded guilty last month
Yeah.
and face up to 5 years behind bars. And on Monday, they received probation, so they didn't get put in jail, and were ordered to each pay $5,500 fine.
It doesn't seem
That's-
like a pretty severe penalty, does it?
No, not at all.
Mm.
Not at all. It's very offensive to me.
Mind you, I suppose they lost their jobs. At least I would hope so. And perhaps the
I hope so,
Chinese
yeah.
authorities will look down on them severely when they eventually get home.
Hit them on the head with turtle
Yeah.
shells.
Good job they didn't pick Ninja Turtles. They would have perhaps got more than they bargained for.
That is true.
Yes.
Good point, Nick. You always make good points.
Thanks, mate.
All right,
And maybe
continuing.
some pizza. Yeah.
And what?
Oh, yeah.
Pizza. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ooh,
Don't
pizza.
talk about food, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My
I'm
stomach
sorry.
is like going
I
crazy.
forgot.
All right, Mary Ellis. This next item we are going to talk about. This was, I'm not sure who sent this in, but the first part of this, it says, did you see that Mary Ellis died yesterday at 101? She was a wonderful woman, and we saw her on television having another flight in a Spitfire at the age of 100. Oh, Tony, right there. It says Tony. Thank you, Tony. And he sent in a link to this article. Mary Ellis, the last female Second World War pilot, dies aged 101. She joined Air Transport Auxiliary in 1941 and flew 1,000 planes in 4 years. That's a lot of flying. Oh my gosh. She's the last surviving British female pilot from the Second World War, and she was 101 and when she died at her home on the Isle of Wight. She delivered Spitfires and bombers to the front line after responding to a radio appeal by the Air Transport Auxiliary for female pilots. And she joined, they mentioned, that organization in 1941 and flew about 1,000 planes over the next 4 years, including 400 Spitfires and 47 Wellington bombers. Well, I would say that she probably has more time in Spitfires and bombers than some of the guys that were assigned to the darn things.
Oh, for sure. And what's more, she flew many of these aircraft all alone. So, when she got into a Wellington bomber, which normally had a crew of 3, plus gunners and the stuff, she was on her own and flew it completely single-handed, straight out of the factory, and flew them down to where they were going to be, used on operational squadrons. So they did a remarkable job. There's a really nice piece actually at the end of this from Richard Adams. I guess you spotted that, Jeff.
Yes, sir. Would you like to read that?
Sure. So I've met Richard. He's a lovely bloke. So Richard wrote, hi, I'm sure most people will have seen the news clip. Mary was a real institution here at Sandown, sometimes attending our Christmas parties or club talks during the year. She was always treated like royalty at any aviation event, especially those involving her World War II colleagues. She would naturally attend in her original ATA uniform, which looked immaculate and still fitted perfectly. What an amazing lady. I can remember times when she would sit quietly over a cup of tea in the clubhouse, when an obviously newly minted PPL might come in with a non-flying friend and then proceed to bray about the technicalities of flight as if they were an accomplished test pilot. Mary, unnoticed, would just raise an eyebrow, the speaker completely unaware of this remarkable lady's past. After the war, she still delivered aircraft for a short period, one notable occasion being when the aircraft was a Meteor jet. Wow, she even moved to the jet age. That's incredible. Mary said that the briefing just consisted of the basic V speeds and endurance with a warning that she's fairly thirsty. With that, she strapped in and successfully delivered the aircraft, becoming the first, and I think only, woman to ever have flown the Meteor. It was also her first time flying a jet. Mary will fly high in the minds of anybody who knew her. Great to meet you all at Farnborough last week. Richard Adams.
It was great meeting you as well, Richard. And, so this is an amazing story, regardless of the gender, but and that just makes it even more spectacular. The fact that, a woman in this role performing such great service to her country. And she's an attractive woman as well. Some pictures of her when she was younger. And I think the last picture there standing in front of I think it's a Spitfire there, isn't it?
Looks like it, yep.
And wearing her original ATA uniform. And she's still an attractive woman, even in her later years.
Yeah, certainly looked after herself. I wouldn't believe she was 101.
No, not at all.
Amazing. So
Well,
rest
sad.
in peace, Miss Mary. Yeah. Anything else?
No, great story. One of those things that I know I've heard of in the past, but beyond just knowing about it, I don't know a lot of the details. So it's nice to hear the details, even perhaps well after the fact.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Red Arrows, RAF Scampton Air Base to be sold off, according to the BBC News. The home of the Red Arrows Air Display Team is to be sold off. The Ministry of Defense has confirmed. RAF Scampton, which was also home to 617 Squadron as they prepared for the Dam Busters mission in World War II.
We say 617.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
Thank you for correcting me. RAF Scampton, which was also home to 617 Squadron as they prepared for the Dam Busters mission in World War II, has housed the Red Arrows since 2000, or should I say 2000. 600 people. I'm just kidding. Currently work at the site near Lincoln. The MOD, which... What's that?
I'm going to clip your ear.
I'm glad there's an ocean separating you guys right now on the show between all the aluminium, and numbers.
I always
tomato.
I always take the opportunity to get a laugh if I can. So. And it doesn't matter if it's by someone else's expense or at somebody else's expense, does it?
Yeah.
The MOD, which wants to save £3 billion by 2040, is also closing RAF Linton-on-Ouse. How do you pronounce that?
Linton-on-Ouse. That's where I did my basic training. The River Ouse is a lovely name for a river, don't you think?
No, it's not.
Sounds like, the stuff in Ghostbusters, the slime.
Yeah, it looked a bit like that too, I must admit.
Linton-on-Puss in where 300 people work.
That's worse.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. Air Chief Marshal Sir Michael Graydon, Chief of the Air Staff from 92 to 97, said Scampton's a very good base. It has an extremely long runway and is situated in a part of the country which is ideal in many ways. I just hope that all of these consequences of closing Scampton are fully understood and appreciated. I'd like to know where they're going to put the Red Arrows. The article goes on. I don't know if there's anything else that is particularly pertinent other than where the heck are they going to put these red arrows?
Well, the Reds have moved around several times in their history, so I don't think this is a particularly dramatic event. They're going from Scampton. They'll be given a new base. After all, you just need a 5-star luxury hotel nearby for the pilots, and a beautifully air-conditioned hangar for the engineers who have to do a lot of polishing, and they'll be happy. So I don't know. They were at Leeming before Scampton, as I recall, and several other places. In the old days, they used to be at Kemble. I seem to recall as well. So, they'll find a home for them, an airfield somewhere where they can go. Quite honestly, they're on the move a lot anyway. It's not like they spend, particularly during the show season, a lot of time at home. So, I think this is just the usual. We don't want to lose another airfield, which I entirely understand. But there you go. I think in order to make cuts, you've got to close some places down.
So what you're telling us is that they're going to be okay.
Yes, they will certainly be okay. They'll just find a new hangar for them, stick them in the corner of Coningsby, perhaps with the BBMF, the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. You can have them all in one spot then.
There you go. Uh-oh. Time for some vacuuming. Yes, the story is about drones. Item D, drone to be used by British military breaks flight record. It's the Zephyr S drone. It's a solar-powered drone to be used by the British military and set a new flight record, its developer Airbus said. The Zephyr S broke the endurance record for an unrefueled aircraft at 1:53 p.m. GMT on Wednesday afternoon, surpassing the 14 days, 22 minutes, and 8 seconds set by an older model in 2010. The plane, which weighs around as much as an average human, cruises in the stratosphere at around 70,000 feet and runs on solar power during the day and solar-charged batteries at night. Kind of reminds me of that flight around the world. I've already forgotten the name of the project where it was a manned
something challenge, was it?
Yeah, solar challenge or something.
Solar challenge, yeah, that
Something like
rings a
that
bell.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, this one is an unmanned version of the same kind of aerial vehicle, and this record-breaking piece of kit is using a wide range of innovative technologies to blur the lines between air and space, and could one day gather battle-winning information to help our troops on the front line. That was a quote from the Minister for Defense Procurement, Stuart Andrew. And described by Airbus as a high-altitude Pseudo satellite, a cross between a satellite and a drone. It has a wingspan of 25 meters and weighs around 75 kilograms.
Pseudo satellite?
A pseudo satellite.
Yeah.
What did I say? Pseudo?
Yes.
No.
Yours was like a type of material you make shoes out of.
Oh, okay. Let me do that again.
No, we liked it the first time.
I did like it.
75 kilos. That's about what Steph weighs, isn't it?
That's an average human.
Yeah, well, I'm considerably more than that. So,
I'm
well, you're
less-
above
I'm-
average.
So if you're considerably more than that, what makes me that
way
What
above
am I?
average.
Actually, I
just
think I'm
like- I'm
closer,
just going-
I'm closer
that-
to 54, 55, I think.
all right. Oh, cool. I mean, that's an incredibly light piece of kit for something with a 25-meter wingspan, isn't it? Incredible.
It doesn't seem like it'd be very durable, or like you could go up
It's
there
flimsy.
and like touch it, and maybe break apart.
Well, I don't know. I remember the one I did on manned power flight. In the 60s and 70s, they weren't very durable, but the modern materials they built these things out of, incredibly flexible, incredibly strong, and incredibly light. So, that technology, I think, is really moving forward. And, obviously, they seem to be able to get it up there and kept it going for 14 days. So that's, a hell of a feat.
Well, speaking of strong, durable, and lightweight, those blow-up sex dolls are.
Yeah. Oh man.
A man could
Nice
face
segue.
charges after allegedly sending a blow-up doll into the flight paths at Vancouver Harbor. The West Vancouver Police Department said 2 men at Ambleside Beach were filming a video on July 3rd with, quote, an adult-sized and shaped inflatable with 10 large helium balloons attached to it. The officer believed release of the inflatables posed a hazard to aircraft entering or leaving the harbor area. As the officer approached, one of the males released the balloons and inflatable, which then floated several hundred meters into the air west of Lionsgate Bridge. Police notified Transport Canada and the Civil Aviation Branch about the incident, who in turn sent an alert to all aircraft in the area. Police arrested the men and seized their phones. They were both released pending an investigation. One of
Seized their phones. Why?
That way they have to show up to court to get it back.
Well, I probably figured they had a lot of good photos.
I don't know.
on those
It's
things.
Canada. I don't understand what happens up there most of the time.
That's crazy.
Surely they just said they were sorry. Isn't that all you need to do in Canada?
Yes, repeatedly.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Apparently, this is some kind of a prank on YouTube. A YouTube prankster under the name Brody TV claimed responsibility for the incident on Twitter. And he said, I'm going to court September 19th on a charge of mischief for letting a sex doll that was strapped to a few balloons fly away. He tweeted, just wanted to let everyone know that in Canada, you must have no fun. I don't think that's true.
All
Liz,
serious
come on,
all
is
the
that
time
true?
in Canada.
This is having fun right now.
Yes, she is. That's true. So
Sitting on that lakeside sipping pink champagne, she's going to be having a ball.
That's right. Swimming and drinking. Andy,
Yeah.
come on, you have fun, don't you? I mean, we have a lot of APG community members living up in the great north.
Absolutely. However, if he's going to do that sort of thing, like letting an inflatable sex doll into the air, perhaps he should have avoided the air lanes. You know.
Yeah, and maybe like one of those prominent landmarks like that Lionsgate Bridge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That may have been part of the problem.
Yeah. Mind you, if you did it in the middle of a deserted desert, I don't suppose it would have made very good footage.
No, probably not. You know, Frick sent us, I think it was Frick, sent us an article that we covered in episode 327 regarding the South African Civil Aviation Authority suspending the operating certificate of SA Express. Looks like they've cleared SA Express to fly again, but it has only granted airworthiness certificates to 2 of the airline's 21 planes. It's going to be hard to make money on only 2 of their 21
They're going to have
planes.
to cut down those turn times. You know,
Yeah. Cram more people on the
that's
airplane.
right.
Uh,
That'll
that's-
help with safety.
Yeah, safety. It said in a statement that as such, the airline is in the meantime permitted to operate with only 2 of its aircraft. In May, the CAA grounded 9 of SA Express's 29 planes after an audit discovered very poor maintenance of aircraft and severe cases of noncompliance that posed serious safety risks. Anyway, so, well, at least maybe they're on their way to getting back their full operating certificate with all those airplanes. But anyway, just thought we'd update that piece of news. And finally, in our news section, this is an interesting one. Not a lot of information about it. From airlive.net, 2 Iraqi Airways pilots having an argument in mid-flight began physically fighting at 37,000 feet, hours after departing from an Iranian airport on Wednesday. The plane, which was carrying 157 passengers at the time, was headed to Iraq from the Mashhad airport, a city to the northeasternmost province of Iran that borders Turkmenistan and Afghanistan. Security guards in the plane intervened to break up the altercation, which, according to passengers on board, caused damage to the cockpit. Whew, that was a pretty big cockpit.
Good job it was a Boeing.
Yeah.
Well, it held up to the. I mean,
Yes.
just imagine if it had been an Airbus.
Oh, it would have crashed.
Exactly.
Well, you can smash most of a Boeing up. I guess it'll keep flying somehow.
They're resilient.
Anyway, the Iraqi Ministry of Transportation, the MOT, said on its website later that day that they have begun an investigation into the pilot and co-pilot's actions and had ordered immediately to restrict them from flying. They will have no chance of escaping harsh penalties and will face the worst and most severe punishments, the least of which is the denial of flight for life. Okay. Well, it's kind of over for them. Their careers are over, and maybe their lives, sounds like in this statement. Sounds like they're going to get tortured or something. I don't know. Looks not good for them. All right. Well, that's it in our news folder. What do you
can I
think?
go to bed now? Oh, okay.
Okay. Good night.
Good night, Nick.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today.
Bye-bye,
wait,
Nick.
Wait, we still have the best part of the show to go, don't we? Which, of course,
course,
is your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
Do we need to take a break, or can we push on?
I think Dana's taking a break.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think I'm okay right now.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Then I think we should push on here.
Soldier on.
Oh, well, this is one that we just received today, and our producer Liz, who is not with us presently because she's enjoying swimming and drinking and the company of friends up in her cottage somewhere in the beautiful country of Canada. But she put this as the leading piece of feedback for us today, and it is from Ivor. He writes, "Hello, all you APG people. It's Ivor from the sunny side of the Atlantic. Just a note about the show recorded at Nigel Towers in fair Oxfordshire, a triumph by most standards. Tarquin has contacted me and has asked me to pass on his congratulations for reading out his feedback so beautifully. And he's right. The only problem is he listened to the audio version as against the rather chaotic YouTube effort. And I fear that he thinks that Atlanta Jeff read it out and that his cultural coaching has been a standout success. Well, I'm not going to be the one that tells him otherwise. Call me a coward if you must, but I'm a man that is easily frightened. But back to the reading itself. I assume you got the handsome and well-spoken chap that did read it from BBC Radio 4 or the World Service. What a triumph. New standards have been set. The bar is very high now. I assume you will be making all efforts to get this young man's signature on a contract as soon as possible." He's referring to, of course, the wonderful Neville Bounds that read out Tarquin's piece of feedback. And nope, he's still out there. He's still a free agent. So if anybody wants to contract Neville, he's available. Although he, I must warn you, is one of the co-hosts of the wonderful Plain Talking UK podcast. Anyway, going on with Ivor's feedback. Now, I'm not saying that the rest of the APG crew are lacking in the delivery of the spoken word. No, far from it. Your, how shall I put it? Your homespun delivery is at the core of your success. If success is how we describe the show. Survival of the show, maybe. No, I'm being unfair. All your accents are a huge help to all of us listeners. Dr. Steph helps us all understand the Deep South y'all. Captain Dana helps us with Chicago-based gangster shows. And Captain Jeff lets us know that there are people from America that you can understand. And finally, the lovable scamp, that is Captain Nick. I assume he's there to confuse your American-based listeners. Good work, Nick. Keep it up.
Aluminum.
Love and kisses from Ivor McDonald. Apparently he has some kind of relationship with Tarquin. So
I don't get where Chicago and me have anything to do with each other.
Well, obviously your accent is a Chicago accent.
As a
Dana.
native of Chicago, I'm confused with you, Dana.
I think Ivor's confused.
Ivor, we need to work on your American accents, or your American accent recognition.
It's Boston.
It's Boston. How do we not know that I'm from Boston?
Oh, well, I'm sure that will generate another piece of feedback.
Perhaps all the Chicago-based gangster shows had Boston-speaking actors. I don't know.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Maybe it's because I look a little bit like Capone, Al Capone.
That could be it.
Yeah, I've seen his death mask, and actually, it's a striking resemblance.
His death mask.
Yeah, if you go to the FBI headquarters in Washington, they have his death mask on show.
What is a death mask?
It's a plaster cast they make of a face when someone's dead.
Oh, self-explanatory, I guess.
There you
Well, there you have it. Thank
I
you.
hope- That's just really,
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
really.
They've got his Tommy gun there as well.
No, that you're just referencing me to a dead man's face.
Well, I didn't start the idea. It was somebody else's idea.
It's a
I
very
just-
famous dead man. Dana, you should
Yeah.
be happy about
He
it.
was a tax evader.
It's notorious.
Yeah.
Notorious. There you go.
Notorious tax evader.
Yes, well,
That's what they got him with in the end, wasn't it? Tax evasion.
it
Yes.
was indeed.
Uh-huh.
All right, moving on. Number 2. Rory writes, "Hi, APG crew. Let me start by saying this is a great podcast." I think that's all we need to read. Let's move on to item
Perfect.
number 3.
Yeah, that's
No.
right.
This is a great podcast. I have almost definitely come down with the APG syndrome. I drive quite a bit now for work, and you all help pass the time wonderfully. I'm a respiratory therapist with an avid passion for aviation. And for a few years, I flew with a critical care transport team on helicopters, S-76, fixed wings, Citation something, I can't remember which model it was, and ambulance. The helicopters were the most fun since you flew relatively low and fast compared to the fixed wing. I was just listening to episode 331 while you were talking about the emergency transponder codes. I can't remember exactly where I heard this, and I also can't figure out how it's hard to remember these 3 numbers, but there's a good saying to help remember what they are. 75, taken alive. 76, radio glitch. 77, going to heaven. I hope this helps some pilot out there having trouble remembering which code they need to put in. A quick question too. Captain Nick, when you were talking about the Acme Red crew that inadvertently pushed the test button, were they confused as to which button to push for landing? If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going.
It ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Sounds like Rory's going to spend a lot of time on the ground then.
Blue skies and tailwinds. Rory, RRT. What is that? Something respiratory, something or other.
Registered respiratory therapist.
Registered
I
respiratory.
think. I feel like that's something I should actually probably know, and I'm not entirely.
That sounds right to me.
Sounds
So-
rude to me.
What do you think? 75 taken alive, 76 radio glitch, 77 going to heaven. I will never remember any of that. I just
No.
remember what the codes
Just
are.
the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I may have scored 77 a number of times in my career, and I haven't gone to heaven yet. I don't think I ever will. So,
Wishful thinking.
yeah, exactly.
You need the other mnemonic, the person who, the 7 going down for the direction that.
Yeah, going down. I didn't say that, she did. So don't be upset with me.
Well, it's the Airbus guys. Always have to squawk 7700 on a regular basis, flying that computer around.
Mm.
I should talk. That's probably the airplane I'm going to. I should shut up now.
Yeah, you should.
You're going to take a lot of grief for that at some point in the very, maybe not so distant future. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe not so distant.
Well, thank you, Rory, for your feedback. Sorry about the syndrome, but many of us
I'm
suffer.
not sorry at all. If he likes Boeings, he can. Yeah.
Oh, come on. They're all great airplanes. We love them all,
Dearly.
don't we? Well, let's don't poop on our parade, huh? Sean writes in. Thank you, Sean. This is from inverse.com. Fecal waste falling from Canadian sky blamed on poopsicles by scientists. But the color of the poop doesn't add up. Okay. Imagine going for a casual drive with the sunroof down, soaking up the rays only to be splattered with poop raining from the sky. I think that's a wonderful day, actually. That's reportedly what happened in Kelowna, British Columbia, to a woman named Susan Allen, who got a bad case of conjunctivitis, aka pink eye, after a strange, smelly, unexplained incident in late May. Now, as Canada's Air Traffic Control Agency has officially denied its involvement in the incident and deemed the report a closed one alternative explanation remains increasingly likely. It may have been a poopsicle. To Susan Allen, the the popsicle explanation, shouldn't it be poopsicle, is not likely to offer comfort or closure, especially in light of the response from Canada's Aviation Authority. One explanation for the falling poop suggested that a plane illegally dropped it from an aircraft during flight, a move that the Canadian aviation regulations deems
Now, you
punishable.
fly one of the oldest airplanes around, Jeff. Can you discharge your tanks in the
Nope.
air?
No, we cannot.
Neither can this is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
But do carry on.
Oh, it is rubbish and waste. But no, we cannot purposely jettison poop from our toilets, people. Come on. Well, anyway, the article goes on. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. We're not going to read the whole thing. But they
They're talking about a low altitude bilge pump. Excuse me?
Well, I don't know if we can really talk about the low altitude bilge pump on our show, but they do mention that the nowadays the new generation of poopsicles are not blue anymore, because most airplanes now use a vacuum suction kind of a system, and they don't use the blue juice as we do in the MD-80 series that Dana and I fly. The MD-90s have the more modern vacuum system, and they're no blue juice on those. But I don't know. What's your in-depth, detailed analysis, Captain Nick, regarding this?
Well, considering that the tanks that all this muck goes into is held securely within the fuselage, it would not only have to leak from the tanks, it would then have to leak through the aircraft skin somewhere. And, the chances of you getting any significant leak that is not spotted. I mean, the airplane would stink if you had a leak from the toilet system. It is rubbish. Now, we do jettison grey water from the sinks. That goes out from the sinks. It goes out through a discharge pipe, through a heated pipe on the outside of the aircraft, and just sprays into the atmosphere and it evaporates. And there is a faint possibility that if the heater on that discharge pipe fails, then you can end up with a lump of ice there that will fall off. But that is just water from the sinks. It's not from the toilets. So I personally have never heard of anything from the toilet flush system getting out of the aircraft. It's discharged into a honey cart at the airfields we land at, and it's perfectly secure system.
I really enjoyed that at least Canada's Air Traffic Control Agency officially denied involvement, because I'm really not sure how they would have had anything to do with it anyway.
Well, they have a remote control switch in their control panel that operates that poop valve. Yeah. Now, I will say, and I think Dana will back me up on this, that especially the older system with the blue juice, there are lavatory service panels on our airplane where there's like a valve that they activate to put in the new fluid and take out the old, or vice versa. And it's possible for that valve to be not fully seated or closed, and that's one of the things we look at when we do a walk around inspection, and we look at to see if there's any evidence of blue fluid on the side of the fuselage, and if so, then that might be an indication that there might be some sort of leak, and it's possible that fluid could leak in flight if you didn't notice it while on the ground. Okay.
He just sent us a message. Internet here is not good.
Is that why British Airways paints the bottom of its aircraft all blue?
We do too, actually.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
You know what? There's a regional airline here in the U.S. And their call sign is Blue Streak.
That's true.
And every time I hear Blue Streak, I'm sorry if you fly for that airline.
I love it.
That's what I think of. I think of the blue juice streaking on the fuselage, and I'm thinking whoever came up with that call sign probably didn't know, some alternative definitions of blue streak. Anyway, so is Dana?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You don't look happy. Are you okay?
No, I'm not.
Why, the internet's not very good?
Not at all.
Okay. Let's just move on then.
I've been this entire trip. just so I can be here,
Oh,
and
no.
it stinks.
Well, hey,
Um,
that goes with this piece of feedback.
Yeah, well, no pun intended, but I was going to add comment if it actually holds true here with this internet,
Yeah.
that it would be very difficult for poop per se to fall out of an airplane, because it has to come, as Nick was kind of talking about, it has to come through a sealed system, leak through from that sealed system, and then leak through the aircraft skin or the door, the access door. So I would very, very highly likely think that the amount of actual solid matter that could get out of that would be very, very minimal at best, if at all. And then the only possibility on a newer, on the new system, I would very highly doubt anything gets out. But on our system, of course, if anything's going to fly, it's just going to be blue urine, or a mixture of some sort. So I would find it very hard that professional scientists or whoever can identify, unless they're doing an analysis under a microscope of some sorts. But I would be in the same camp that I think this is very highly unlikely.
Well, Susan got pink eye, and it was obviously the Canadian Air Traffic Control System's fault.
Yes,
it had to, absolutely had to be.
Come on.
Or birds.
Or birds.
Oh yeah, a good point.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Dr. Steph.
Well, she's a doctor.
She knows these things.
Yes.
Or pterodactyls.
Also, more plausible than what they're suggesting here.
Exactly.
It's hard to sue a bird, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, definitely not going to get any monetary compensation out of that one.
No.
Might
All
get a
right.
few eggs from the chicken.
Our lovely community member, Tanya, sent us some feedback. She says, I wanted to share this very cool blog post by Ant Pruitt, a Twitter friend who you may recognize as an occasional guest on the This Week in Tech podcast. He is also an aviation geek, an av geek, and this post talks about the 360-degree cockpit tours that are available on the French Air and Space Museum's website. And then she gave us a link to that. And she said, I just thought that the APG community would be interested. All the best, as always, clear skies and tailwinds, Tanya. And this article, as she mentions, talks about the Air and Space Museum in Paris and its associated website. And I didn't check it out yet, but apparently there is a way that you can look through this thing and see some 360-degree views of various cockpits, including, I'm sure there must be an Airbus in there somewhere, but the screenshot I'm looking at right now is an Alouette 3, a B-26C Invader. Alouette?
Oh, sorry.
Alouette.
Yeah, that's the one.
Boeing 727, Boeing 747, Concorde, etc. So you should check it out. We're going to have the link to this site in our show notes. And we thank you, as always, Ms. Tanya, for your relevant and great feedback. Gabrielle.
If Nick sings again, I'm going to get off this podcast.
Alouette, gentil alouette. Alouette, gentil.
You shouldn't have, Dana. You shouldn't have. Double daring him right there.
Yeah. I've got lots of songs. You want another one?
No.
The one in French is
Please.
okay. It
Oh,
does
the
not contain
sexual
any-
life of a camel.
Oh, okay, there was one.
It's stranger than anyone thinks. What? Not?
That
Bye,
reminds
guys.
me.
Good being on the podcast. See you later.
No, don't, Dana. There was a moment that that I failed to take advantage of when I was driving with Nigel and Nick in Nigel's car. I think it was Nigel's car, or maybe it was Nick's car. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I was sitting in the back seat, and these guys were singing the song, and I'm not going to mention the name of the song because I think it's somewhat offensive. Maybe. But actually, they say if you listen to the words, it's not really. But these guys were having a great time. We had gone to a pub, and they were slightly lubricated, and they were just singing away. And I thought I was recording this, on my phone. But then after they finished, I looked down, and of course, I wasn't recording. So
Yeah,
I missed it.
karma.
I know. Anyway, it's in my memory though forever. Thank you very much, Nick and Nigel, for that.
Alouette, junti alouette, alouette, junti kumite. I mean,
Ga-
what?
Gabrielle or Gabriel, your choice, says, number 5, Dear Sir, I am registering a complaint. No, wait, that's not it. I am one of those passengers who, when in flight, suddenly adopts a fear of heights, death, turbulence, the whole package, basically. And I realize that my paranoia is irrational. Yet I noticed that informing myself on the way planes fly and the whole process calms me down greatly. This brings me to a question. Is it dangerous when planes pass through cumulonimbus clouds when they lower their altitude before landing? I've read on endless sources that thunderstorms / cumulonimbus clouds can cause aircraft to crash or at least present a potential danger. Is it then dangerous for a plane to pass through cumulonimbus clouds just before landing? I ask this because there are multiple times in the past where I was in a plane which landed in a city where it was really cloudy and rainy, and the plane shakes terribly each time we pass through the rainy clouds just before landing, and I don't see any website which mentions this. In addition, how does the air traffic control or pilots in general handle the fact that some cumulonimbus clouds form out of nowhere and unpredictably? Please do not feel obligated to answer immediately, and thank you in advance for your time. Kind regards, Gabriel. So, I think we have a lot of answers for you, Gabriel, and who wants to go first with this one? I'm looking at my co-hosts, and they're all chomping at the... Oh, I see a hand right there. Nick.
Love to. So a CUNIM is a rain-bearing cloud of cumulus form. So it's one of those ones that grows and looks a bit like a cauliflower. And they, when they're big and severe, and they carry a lot of lightning and heavy rain in them, they can carry a lot of turbulence, and that'll throw the airplane around. So generally speaking, if you've got a severe CUNIM, and it will show up on the radar in different colors, and if it's a bad one, we will see the heavy amounts of rain and possibly even hail in the middle of it showing up very clearly on the radar, and we will avoid those definitely. So the cumulonimbus can actually be a cloud you might fly through, or certainly the edges of, if it's not particularly bad. If it's a smallish one, doesn't have a lot of vertical extent, but certainly the major ones that boom up to the troposphere, through the tropopause, sorry, they're the ones really to avoid. And they can be dangerous if an aircraft decides to try and navigate through one. So we give them a wide berth. Going underneath them on the approach can be also a problem. Normally, you're not actually flying through the turbulent air of the cloud itself, and you're below the base of it. It can be reasonably clear. You might be flying through some heavy rain, but what you're really looking for there are severe downdrafts, and the worst of which are usually called microbursts. So that is a big, heavy column of very cold air and often rain coming out of the cloud, hitting the ground, and spreading out. It gives you an effect which can be relatively dangerous on the approach. So it starts off by you hitting quite a strong headwind, which makes you rise up above the glide slope. You tend to throttle back because you're going faster now because you've hit a headwind, and you push the nose down and maintain the glide slope. And then you pass through the headwind and move into the tailwind area, and there you've got your throttles back at idle, and you're in a big downdraft, and you're low on airspeed. Now you suddenly hit a tailwind, and that can rob you of even more speed, and that's what often causes, or has in the past caused, a few accidents. So because we're aware of all these phenomena, we avoid them. There are a lot of airfields where, in places where they can occur, that you get good warnings from them. They have wind shear detectors that the tower will tell you about. They obviously measure the wind speeds and tell you about them, and we as pilots are trained to deal with them, and we can cope with them well. Most of the time, they're not going to do that. Microbursts are relatively infrequent and only occur in certain areas. And when we go to those areas, we're usually pre-briefed and ready for them. And if the weather is forecast to be particularly bad, then obviously, if necessary, we will just hold off until that weather clears, or if necessary, divert. Just bear in mind, a thunderstorm is a relatively short-lived phenomena. Unless it's being continually regenerated and recurring, it can build up and disappear again in as little as 30 minutes. So it's not actually a major problem. So we treat them with great caution. We avoid them whenever possible. If we do go close to them, it's because we've assessed them as being relatively benign. And don't forget, we're the guys trying to keep ourselves safe. We're never going to put ourselves into danger, and as a consequence, those sitting behind us are not going to be put in danger either.
Well
put.
My thoughts on this, and number one, you don't necessarily have to be in clouds to get some turbulence. There's this thing called clear air turbulence, which we have no ability to actually predict or really be able to avoid pretty rough air, which is quite common. Now, as far as flying through cumulus clouds, a lot of times, as Nick was just talking about, especially in the southeast United States or any tropical area, there are a lot of cumulus clouds that you just don't have a choice but to go through. And what causes that is, and Nick did a great job of explaining, but what causes that is extreme updraft and downdrafts, or temperature differentiation within the cloud. So it causes the updrafts and downdrafts, and that's what the actual turbulence is. It's not necessarily a cloud. It usually is associated with cumulus clouds for sure. And the best way I can describe for you to be able to put a picture to it, if you have ever been by the ocean, and if you're watching a very calm sea and it just kind of comes in and just doesn't really break any waves, then that's really most of the time we're flying through smooth air. But when you see big waves breaking over rocks and seeing splash, the water splashing up, and it's very turbulent, that's kind of what you can imagine what's inside that cumulus cloud. And I can tell you one thing is as Nick had said as well, I wouldn't have in the past tried to avoid those types of clouds. Even when we're coming into approach, we'll often deviate around those clouds because we are very well aware of how turbulent those clouds are. But more times than not, those clouds are creating not nearly as bad turbulence as you're perceiving. So somebody that's already perceiving the fact that they don't like turbulence, any type of movement on the aircraft is of course going to be a little bit extra frightening, or alert, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think of a specific word and I can't think of it. So anyways, basically what I'm trying to say is that you'll be more sensitive to it because of the fact that it's something that scares you, and we as professional aviators in our judgment would not necessarily go through something that's going to be severe in nature, certainly, and moderate is very, very rare occurrence, but moderate turbulence to us is probably what you would consider to be severe turbulence and scare the ever living daylights out of you. So that's what we try to as professional passenger pilots. Now, I don't know about the cargo world, I can't speak for them, but as professional passenger pilots, that's what's always going through my mind. I know that for a fact. I'm sure Nick and Jeff always think the same way, and that is, we're trying to do everything we can do in the flight deck, not only to get us there safely, that's job number one, but number two is be as smooth as we possibly can and choose the path that's going to cause the least disruption. And it's not uncommon for us to have to go through some of those cumulus clouds. We just avoid the thunderstorms.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You're talking about Gabriel a couple times where you've been in a plane that's landed in a city that's been cloudy and rainy. So that's not necessarily a cumulonimbus cloud. If there's not a lot of upward development of it with, associated strong winds and thunder and lightning, you can still get reasonable turbulence out of those types of weather systems as well that aren't quite as dangerous as flying through cumulonimbus clouds. So just to point out, there's, rain showers do come in different varieties, and some are more forgiving than others.
And that's a good point, Doc Steph, is because, like, for example, in the Northeast U.S. and in England, a lot of times you get those low stratoform clouds that are just low hanging and associated with high winds. So up in the Northeast, you might have a northeaster where you have 30, 40 mile an hour winds on the ground. It doesn't, you're going through low
nimbostratus
clouds. Nimbostratus, right? They're very low to the ground, and those types of winds can cause turbulence without you even being near a cumulus cloud.
I seem to remember a certain day in Boston back in April of this past year that was similar to what you just described.
Yeah, the one that you ran in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very common up up in the Northeast and certain times of the year down in the Southeast. But Northeast, I mean, it's very common to just have a low cloud layer, 500-foot cloud layer that's only 1,000, 1,500 feet thick, and have excessively strong opposing winds between layers. So you come down and you get the winds gusting off the ocean, and it can be 20, 30 mile an hour winds or 15, 20 knot winds, and lo and behold, that's causing all the turbulence too. So that's a very good point, Steph.
Yeah, as mentioned, it's usually the phenomenon or phenomena that occur associated with cumulonimbus cloud formations, and the amount of rain and rainfall rates, etc., and associated wind shears and microbursts that can come from them. But many, many years ago, before we had the technology that we have today with advanced radar, there were a couple of incidents where airplanes they didn't have radar, and they flew through some pretty nasty storms and actually broke up in flight. But that's a very rare thing anymore, unless you purposely fly through one of these really nasty mesoscale thunderstorm cells. And our technology now is that we can see these things, and we can take steps to avoid them. We assess based on our tools, and we decide whether or not we need to give something a large berth, or perhaps even divert to another airport because of them, if we deem that the storms are severe enough to be unsafe.
Yeah, and a lot of times, especially when you go into bigger airports like New York and down in Atlanta, Charlotte, if the storms are severe enough, they won't even let you come in. Period. They're going to put you in holding, and you're not going to be flying. So,
Nick, you don't like my terminology?
Sorry, Jeff.
I'm watching the chat room go, what? Guys
what I was
critiquing me
going
in
to
the
say,
chat room.
though, which is much more apt, is it was something that someone mentioned on a previous podcast about the passenger beside them was a bit nervous, thinking the aircraft was going up and down huge distances, and they were just in relatively benign turbulence.
Mhm.
And that was to pull up their phone and use the Flight Radar 24, or there are other apps available, and put their flight on there, and there you can see actively what the aircraft is actually doing, how high it's going, how low it's going, what its flight path is. And I think if you're concerned about what the airplane's doing, that is a great app to put on your phone and monitor your progress, and it gives you a lot of information about what the flight's doing. And when you think that the airplane it might be going plummeting down towards the ground, you can actually look and see that it's not. It's maintaining a good stable flight path.
Yeah, good point. We have some breaking news. In the middle of our show here, just received, I was watching the chat room, James Balch sent us a link to a tweet from Mexico. An Aeromexico Embraer E190 has suffered an accident shortly after takeoff in Durango Airport in Mexico. And that's all the detail that I have at this moment. But just thought I'd mention that looks like we have another crash, which is
Not been a
good.
good year.
Not very good news at all.
No. Maybe we'll be talking about that on the next show. But thank you, James, for keeping all of us aware as to what's going on in the aviation world. And hopefully not too many injuries or fatalities in that. Okay. So I think we sufficiently answered Gabriel's question. I mean, we could probably talk for an hour on it if we wanted to, but that's one of those things, you look at those little puffy cumulus clouds out there and you think, God, they look so soft, like a little cotton ball. How in the world could they possibly be bumpy if you flew through them? But it's one of nature's practical jokes, I think.
Right?
What's that?
Visible moisture. It's going to create a little bit of
bumps
along the way.
For sure. All right. Brett writes, number 6. On my way to Oshkosh, I stopped for dinner and a beverage in Grand Rapids, Michigan at Founders Brewery, a really nice place to go, where I saw this t-shirt. So obviously they have a beer named Curmudgeon. Any relation to the old pilot/Curmudgeon? And he sent us a snapshot for us to look at. And I think we've talked about this beer. I think we've talked about the beer, the label on this particular beer.
Yeah, remember I brought it a 4-pack and showed it
that's right.
to Nick way back when, probably episode 240, 250 or so.
Now this gentleman on the photo is a much older chap than the old pilot Curmudgeon, and not as good looking, I might add as well. But there is some resemblance.
You're a gentleman, Jeff, but and I don't have a funny hat like that.
You should get one.
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
It almost looks like Dana's hat a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah,
wow.
A bit.
Not really.
No, not really.
It has to be a little more. It has to be a little more like that, a little bit sideways, a little more crinkled, a little more crinkled.
But there's a certain resemblance.
There's definitely a resemblance now.
We're getting there.
Yeah, and in the nose territory. I mean, Dana's nasal organ and that
Nasal organ.
They're very similar, don't you think?
Is that a medical term?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not.
It's probably a Monty
Does that have
Python
anything
term.
to do with the blow up doll? I mean, from earlier that I missed?
No.
No. Also not.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Brett. I'm glad you enjoyed the food and the beverages at Founders, and thanks for showing us that photo. We'll have that in the show notes if you're interested, folks. Number 7, Steve sends us an update to the incident that we talked about a few episodes ago, the China Air Cargo 747 that excurted? No.
Had an excursion.
Had an excursion.
A runway
It's not a word.
excursion.
Yeah, I know. I thought, as I was
It was
saying
turned
it, I thought,
into a lawnmower temporarily.
I've just made a new word now, excurd. Don't excurd if you know what's good for you. An excursion off the runway 10 left or 9. I don't know which one it was. I just heard a big clap of thunder. Speaking of weather
cumulonimbus
and cumulonimbus clouds. So he sent us a link. Apparently there's more to the story, and there's some, he said, interesting to hear the ops communication and see the pics of the grass. And this is Steve Horn, Captain Steve. And I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to, seems like that was not coming from the right place when I heard some audio here. Let me make sure that I have this set up properly. Okay, it's on. Let me see if you can hear the audio.
3544, turn right heading 110.
Dynasty 514, we are going wrong due to last minute deviation from the runway.
That's 5140 Heavy Roger, fighting 090, climb, maintain 5,000.
Okay, we heard
Heading
this.
090, climb, maintain 5,000, Dynasty 5148.
13544, turn right, heading 180.
Okay.
O'Hare Communications on Rosslyn.
Yeah, this is Daryl, 45.
Yeah. Okay, so I have something kind of strange for you.
Okay.
Okay, so we had we got a call from ops. China, hold on a second. Okay, it's a China Cargo Airlines 747.
Okay.
That apparently landed in the grass area of 10 left, did a touch and go, went back up, came around, and then landed on 10 right. But I guess he took out a bunch of signs. The tower's, and he's on his way to, he's taxiing the southeast cargo area right now. The tower's
Okay.
trying to get information from the pilot, but the pilot's not giving up any information whatsoever. So Ops is asking for CPD and aviation to try and intervene and get some information about what exactly happened. So Ops is
Okay.
following the aircraft at this time. But he was
10-4, I'll start heading out there right now.
southeast cargo. It's a China Cargo Airline.
Yeah, I know exactly where he's going to go.
Okay.
I'll head.
Anyway, that's about half of the audio from this video, which we'll have a link to. China Airlines touches down in grass at O'Hare, part 2. But just interesting to hear the operations communications, how they're going. Like, okay, how do I describe this? And also interesting, I think, that the pilots from that particular flight were avoiding having any discussion at all about what had happened.
Who? Us?
Grass?
No,
Yeah, what?
Grass.
I do not understand.
What is that word? It's not in our list of
Yeah.
aviation phraseology. Oh, and for Ivor, this has nothing to do with the actual story, but that was an excellent example of a Chicago accent right there. The lady that we were just listening to.
Ah, yeah. Good point.
Oh, she sounded American to me.
And in this, well, she is.
Yes.
In this video, by the way, there's some. It's like a slideshow, and they show some of the imprints of the tires off into the grass, and some of the pieces of equipment that were taken out, and it could have been could have gone a lot worse, I'd say.
Mhm.
It did.
Yeah, watching the video, the surveillance video is pretty impressive too for anyone who hasn't done that.
And when you see the 747, did you notice how the pitch of the thing was really moving quite? I don't know how to describe it, but it was looked like they were hanging on for dear life, trying to get that thing back airborne and pointed in the right direction and flying safely. Doesn't look like a nice smooth transition from.
No, it was a good old lurch there as he tried to get it back towards the runway and then go around. Oh,
yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Steve, for alerting us to that. And again, please check it out, dear listener, by clicking on the link in the show notes. Let's see. Moving on. Devin says, just wanted to share this quick YouTube video about robot tugs. Yes, the day is here. Well, at least at Heathrow.
We've had sex dolls and now we're talking about tugs.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the robot tugs, Nick, or have you experienced
Well, I know. Luckily, no, I haven't had to.
them? And where did they
suffer a
tug you?
robot tug.
That's what my question, really.
I think you'll need to ask Devin.
That's a little bit too
Sacramento.
Yeah, HR is monitoring this conversation.
I'm sorry.
And notice who's not in this conversation.
Yeah. Wow.
Makes a change.
He says, Nick, have you seen them or have ever been pushed back by these ground drones? Warmest regards from Devin in Sacramento.
No,
Nick.
is the answer. No.
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't see any when I was
no,
at Heathrow.
No, they seem to be being trialed by another airline.
I see. Okay.
But they look quite useful. I mean, it's just another way of putting someone out of a job, mind you.
But isn't somebody controlling the tug from a remote location, or are they completely autonomous?
Well, it looks like the guy walking on the headset is doing the guiding. I don't know whether they have an additional bloke, but
yeah.
So I'm assuming that they will be able to do away with tug drivers, and the same guy on the headset that walks back with you will now control the electric tug. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm failing to see the advantage.
Yeah, I don't really see it either, but it's
Interesting
cool.
nonetheless. Yeah, technology. Yay.
Yay. Yay for technology. Okay.
Well,
and it could be something like having to do with, if I can find the darn piece of, here we go. Going green.
We're going green.
Although, I don't know.
We're going
Unless they're electric, they're probably not.
Oh, I think they are electric. I think that's part of the point.
But, you could have electric tugs with humans steering and driving them as well. Right?
Yeah.
Well, until the tug pushes an airplane into another airplane or an object, I mean, it's humans too. But
yeah. Well, anyway, thanks, Devin. 9. Radio Roger has a question for us. He said, hi, Jeff. Hope you had a great time in the UK. I did. Thank you, Roger. Here's some feedback I hope will be interesting to the APG community. And again, this is from Radio Roger, and let's take a listen.
Greetings, APGers. Roger Stern here, a.k.a. Radio Roger. I'd like to give a shout-out to JetBlue, and with that, ask a question. My daughter, who was living in Boston at the time, flew into Newark for a one-day trip. She had booked the last JetBlue flight back that night. Well, there was bad weather in Boston, and as the day went on with the flights going back and forth between the two cities, the delay started adding up. And when it was time to fly home, the Boston-bound flight was delayed for a couple of hours. Finally, the plane and crew which were to handle her return flight arrived from Boston and Newark, but as you can guess, the crew had run out of legal hours and couldn't return. That would seem to have been the end of it for my daughter and her fellow passengers, who would have to wait until the following morning to fly out of there. But JetBlue then did something interesting. There was one more flight from Boston to Newark with a crew that was supposed to overnight in the Newark area, but they had still not run out of hours. So on the fly, no pun intended, JetBlue assigned them and their plane to be the return flight. Well, I've never seen that happen before. My question is this unusual? Would Acme add an extra leg to a plane and flight crew at the last minute to get passengers where they are supposed to be? My other question is for Captains Jeff and Dana, who fly multiple legs in one day. If you were supposed to start and end your day in Atlanta, would you still pack an overnight bag in case you get stuck in the wrong city? So those are my questions. This is Radio Roger wishing you blue skies and tailwinds over and out.
Thank you, Radio Roger. What a great radio voice he has.
Indeed.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we do the same thing at Acme on occasion. In fact, that reminds me of a time that we arrived in Denver, and we had a nice long layover ahead of us, and we were informed as we were taxiing in that we were going to be flying from Denver to LaGuardia. And we thought, we thought we were finished with our day. We were already thinking about, where we were going to eat and all the fun that we were going to have in Denver. And they said, yeah, we had an airplane here earlier today that had a mechanical issue, and it's delayed now like 6-7 hours, and the passengers are still here. And we see you still have duty day left, and we want you to fly from Denver to LaGuardia. And I'd like to say we were happy to do it. I'm not really happy to do that, but we felt an obligation to do it. And we arrived in New York City very, very late. I think it was like, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think I talked about it on an earlier episode a couple of years ago, where we got to a hotel that we didn't usually use, and they didn't understand how the whole system worked, and we waited for another hour to 2 hours waiting for somebody from Acme to let these people know that they could give us a room. It was just a big mess. And so yes, that does happen on occasion. Fortunately for me, it has not happened too many times, but at least we got the passengers, albeit several hours late, but we got them to their destination. And any other folks have that kind of experience?
I would say it's probably me over Nick for sure, because Nick's, in long haul, they're not going to be able to reroute him or change his schedule per se that easily. Maybe could they deadhead you, Nick? But you can't just pick up another flight, correct?
Well, we can if we've got duty. Yes, we can. We've shifted around from one flight to a different flight depending on the availability of pilots. We sometimes, they just say, look, this bloke hasn't pitched up. You go fly his flight, and we'll find someone to fly your flight, and you'll just leapfrog during the day. But similar sort of problems if you do a turn back and come back into the same airfield with a problem, then you're not going to be able to complete the flight. So I've done the odd trip where I've had to find hotels for everyone and sort everybody out. Yeah, diversions, that sort of thing. So it does happen.
And that's my same experience as Jeff was talking about. It's not uncommon for us to be what's called rerouted, and that is they change what we are planned to fly, and in some cases they'll go ahead and just put you on a new overnight like they would have with these pilots, or they'll just go ahead and deadhead you back to your original overnight depending on how much time you had available. But one thing I want to point out is that you are under no obligation to absolutely do something unless you feel as though you'll be safe and rested and not fatigued. So that's a key, and that crew may have had a long day already, but they were legal to do it. And if they're legal to do it as long as they're rested to do it, then why wouldn't you go do it? And ultimately, we are in the customer service business, passenger service business. So our job, even though it may not always be exactly what we want, we may have wanted that long Denver overnight or a long Pensacola overnight or wherever else it may be. Sometimes you just have to do things you just don't like to do. The other part of that question is, do you bring things along even if you have a day line? And the short answer to that question is yes. I don't always necessarily pack another bag. I have my my crew bag that has all my flying equipment in, and there are sometimes that I'll just go ahead and throw in just in case a shaving kit, vanity kit, and then an undershirt and other undergarments to make sure that if I do get stuck someplace that I would have fresh things to change into, not necessarily the pants or the shirt, uniform shirt, because generally speaking, I'll wear that for at least the pants for more than one day. It's hard to pack all that clothing. Not hard to bring an extra shirt, but having extra pants for every day is not the easiest thing to do. So that answers that question for you.
Yes, and I've mentioned the story several times on the last 8 years of doing the show, or however long it's been, where when I was new, and I think I was a 727 co-pilot, fourth from the bottom, talking about lack of seniority. I was on my first day, I think, of 6 or 7 days on call, and they called me in for a turnaround. And so I'm thinking, oh, cool. And this is back in the days before we had rollerboards. So the big, giant black Samsonite suitcase was the pilot suitcase. And then the big flight kit, with all the JEPS stuff in it. And so it was like very, very heavy stuff on both sides. And so when you had the opportunity to go in and not have that big, giant Samsonite suitcase full of stuff, you could leave it at home. Then, it was very tempting. And so I thought, well, it's just a turnaround, so I'll go in and I'll just take my flight kit. And so off I went and did a trip, and I was supposed to be home later that night, and then we got delayed, and then we were supposed to go from Cincinnati to Atlanta, but we arrived in Cincinnati after the last flight going from Cincinnati to Atlanta. So that means that we had to overnight in Cincinnati, and I'm thinking, well, no problem. One night I'll catch or deadhead back home the next day. No big deal. I can get usually the hotels we stay in have, toothbrushes and toothpaste and really bad razors and that kind of thing to use in a pinch if you need it. And so that's what I did. And then while I was waiting at the hotel to leave the next day, I got a call from scheduling that said, oh, we need you to now pick up a trip, a Miami trip. This is back when we had a Miami base. And so we're going to deadhead you from Cincinnati to Miami and pick up that trip. And that was like a 2 or 3 day trip. And I said, would it be okay if you routed me through Atlanta so that my wife can bring a suitcase with stuff in it for me? And so that's what they did. They routed me through Atlanta and then went down to Miami. And long story short, I ended up flying the entire 6 or 7 days with, let's see, the Atlanta crew, the Miami crew, Seattle crew, I think a Salt Lake City crew. I don't know how many different crews I was with, and I don't remember all the places that I ended up, but it was quite a trip. And so since that time, I learned my lesson. And so I always head to the airport with, at least, as Dana said, at least a change of undergarments and a shaving kit and that kind of thing. Usually I'll just take the whole darn rollerboard with stuff in it, and then I'm set. All right. I think it might be time now for us to hear this week's installment of Plain Tales, and it is entitled The Aluminum Trail. Take it away, old pilot.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. The Aluminium Trail. James Douglas Jr. was to become the Secretary of the Air Force. Larry Clinton would be a well-known band leader. Richard Cole and Edgar McElroy both flew in the Doolittle raid. Theodore Stevens' future was to include election to the U.S. Senate. George Olson became a comic book cartoonist who, for 40 years, drew The Phantom. Bruce Sunderland would govern Rhode Island. Vernon Martin was a college and pro NFL footballer who was the starting quarterback for the University of Texas, becoming one of the immortal 13 Longhorns. Gene Autry would be a famous singer-songwriter and gain worldwide fame as the singing cowboy who owned
Champion the Wonder Horse, Champion the Wonder Horse.
Roy Farrell and Sidney DeCansar would found Cathay Pacific Airways, and perhaps the best known to us, Ernest K. Gann, would pen such wonderful aviation fiction as The High and the Mighty, and regarded by many as one of the best aviation books ever written, Fate is the Hunter. As odd a combination as folk as you would ever meet, but the remarkable thing was that they all served together in a little-known, certainly outside of the United States, and little-understood mission during the Second World War. This mission was flown in one of the world's most dangerous areas and in dire conditions. It would destroy hundreds of aircraft and kill many of their crews. Those that survived the awful terrain and weather still faced the threat of being shot down by Japanese fighters. To this day, the fate of over 300 aviators who disappeared is unknown. Most served in appalling conditions, often feeling abandoned and unappreciated, flying in a task that veterans would call the Lost Campaign. To understand the background, we need to delve a little into Chinese history. China had gone to war with Japan in 1937, but by the time the United States entered the Pacific War, Japan, by far the stronger force, had sealed off China from outside supply lines. Its ports had been conquered, and the last rail connection with the Soviet Union, a distant and pitiful lifeline, had been closed in 1941 by a Soviet-Japanese neutrality treaty. The infamous Burma Road lasted a while longer, but when the Japanese captured the port of Rangoon, the Burma Road was left with nothing to carry. The armies of Imperial Japan occupied a swathe of Asia, and their march seemed inexorable. Japan's expansion might have been much more aggressive, if not for the valiant and bloody resistance of the Chinese Generalissimo, Chiang Kai-shek and his fighters offered up in the parts of China that the Japanese did not fully control. In one estimate, Chiang's soldiers tied up well over 1 million imperial troops, but the Chinese were poorly equipped with weapons, ammunition, and supplies. The Allies, and America in particular, were keen for China to keep the Japanese forces occupied. Should those troops be freed from their duties in China and transferred to the Pacific theater, future invasion plans might well be placed in jeopardy. On the 25th of February 1942, President Roosevelt wrote to General George C. Marshall, stating that it is of the utmost urgency that the pathway to China be kept open. And he committed 10 C-53 Sky Trooper transports for Lend-Lease delivery to the Chinese National Aviation Corporation to build its capability. Creating an airlift to assist China presented the Army Air Force with a considerable challenge. In 1942, it had no units trained, nor was it equipped for moving cargo, and no airfields existed in the Chinese, Burmese, and Indian theaters for basing the large numbers of transport that would be required. Flying over the Himalayas was also extremely dangerous, and made even more so by the lack of reliable charts, an absence of radio navigation aids, and a dearth of weather information. The task was initially taken on by the 10th Air Force and then by the Air Transport Command, and referred to as the India-China Ferry. Beginning in 1942, it was to continue for 3.5 years, but would, certainly at the start, be beset with difficulties. The new Air Transport Command was initially a semi-military organization, with most of its leadership coming from the ranks of airline executives who merely swapped their dark blue civilian uniforms for Army khaki. The ATC also drew heavily on the airlines for manpower, using civil airline pilots, radio operators, and other aircrew personnel from airlines to crew the transports that had been hurriedly purchased from civilian sources. The India-China Ferry also struggled with poor organization, an ill-defined command structure, and a low priority when compared with other theaters of operation. 10 former Pan Am DC-3s were requisitioned from American Airways, but they sat idle for the lack of crews to fly them to India. Commanders in both India and Burma made claims for jurisdiction over the mission, and a strange shared responsibility for the effort was meted out. Finally, a single airlift commander was appointed, and the first mission over what was to be called the Hump was flown in April 1942. A pair of DC-3s departed from Dinjan in the district of Assam in India with a load of 8,000 gallons of aviation fuel. The fuel was intended to resupply the Doolittle raiders, whom it was hoped would be landing safely in China following their daring raid on Tokyo from the aircraft carrier USS Hornet. However, while still some 650 miles from Tokyo, the task force was spotted by a Japanese patrol craft, and although it was sunk, a radio warning had gone out. 10 hours early and a couple of 100 miles short of their proposed launch point, the B-25 bombers started and took off. They struck a successful blow against the imagined invincibility of the Japanese homeland before setting course for China. However, the fuel that the airlift carried for them wasn't going to be used. With the extra miles to fly and other unforeseen challenges, the Doolittle raiders failed to make their destination airfields. They did, however, make it over the Chinese coastline, or in one case the Soviet Union, where they either bailed out or made crash landings. The journey that those who flew the Hump to supply the Chinese forces was also full of risk. The official history of the Army Air Force describes it thus. The Brahmaputra Valley floor lies 90 feet above sea level. From this level, the mountain wall surrounding the valley rises quickly to 10,000 feet and higher. Flying eastwards out of the valley, the pilot first topped the Patkia Range and then passed over the upper Chindwin River Valley, bounded by a 14,000-foot ridge. He then crossed a series of 14 to 16,000-foot ridge lines separated by the valleys of the West Irrawaddy, East Irrawaddy, Salween, and Mekong rivers. The main hump, which gave its name to the whole awesome mountainous mass and to the air routes which crossed it, was the Sansung Range, up to 15,000 feet high, between the Salween and the Mekong rivers. East of the Mekong, the terrain became decidedly less rugged and the elevations more moderate as one approached the Kunming airfield itself, 6,200 feet above sea level. The Assam-Kunming route was situated in the middle of three Eurasian air masses that were stirred and conflated by the presence of the Himalayas themselves. Moist, warm air from the Indian Ocean to the south produced high pressure that swept north, whilst cold, dry air from Siberia moved south. These lows and highs were extreme, producing violent winds, and when those winds hit the immovable mass that was the world's tallest mountain range, they shot upwards at startling speeds until they cooled and then rushed downward in terrifying downdrafts that hurled aircraft earthwards at stupefying rates of descent. Turbulence inside the cloud mass was severe. Pilots reported being flipped upside down by gusts, whilst many others were unable to report anything because they went missing. Hail, sleet, and torrential rains lashed the aircraft. Thunderstorms built suddenly into whirling, opaque worlds that not only meant a lack of visibility but also severe icing, while the peaks of the hump were waiting. Westerly jet streams sometimes reached 150 miles an hour, and 115 miles an hour was not at all unusual. A trip in a C-47 from China back to India could see ground speeds of only 30 miles an hour, according to some hump stories, and pilots cruising at 16,000 feet might find their aircraft carried uncontrollably 10,000 feet in either direction. The weather was at its worst from February to April, with fierce thunderstorms and heavy icing. May to September was the monsoon season, with even worse thunderstorms. October and November meant good weather, which brought out the Japanese fighters, and December and January brought heavy winds, turbulence, and more icing. Despite the presence of Japanese fighters, particularly on the more southern routes, the hump was officially declared a non-combat operation with lower pay scales and less time at home. Communications were poor, aeronautical maps were unreliable, and weather reporting almost non-existent. P-40 fighters, which sometimes escorted cargo planes, came with no radio at all, so the crew members installed ad hoc transmitters built for Piper Cubs. Homing beacons were positioned at every refueling airport, but the weather often blocked them out. Pilots would sometimes use a commercial radio station just over the border in China as a guide. Maintenance was always an issue, with insufficient spares and a shortage of mechanics. Heat and humidity, bad accommodation, and poor food made living conditions difficult, and with the danger and hardships, morale was always a problem. Malaria, dysentery were prevalent diseases, and water could only be consumed after purification by iodine. After the C-47s came the Curtiss C-46 Commando, a whale of an aircraft that carried 70% more cargo than the C-47 and boasted two of the finest and most powerful piston engines ever produced. The 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 Radial. The aircraft were famously uncomfortable, with passengers having to sit on the floor in a plane with no heater. The C-46 could easily outclimb the mountains, but it was deeply flawed. Its biggest fault were tiny leaks that occurred in wing fuel tanks and lines. Such leaks weren't unusual amongst complex multi-engine aircraft, but in the Commando, they were fatal. Curtiss had failed to vent the juncture between the wing and fuselage, so the petrol pooled there instead of quickly evaporating. Random sparks from the fuel pumps caused some 20% of all Hump C-46 to explode in flight. Eventually, the C-46 were replaced by the Douglas C-54, a variant of the DC-4 airliner, which became the standard long-range aircraft. They could carry 10 times the cargo of the C-47 and could fly 4,000 miles. Having a ceiling of 22,000 feet was marvelous, but they were still unpressurized. Those in command of the Hump operation were frequently changed. I can only assume that it was an unpopular assignment. One commander would arrive unannounced at the various Air Transport Command bases in India and China with his hair on fire, sacking and reassigning officers whenever he found laxity and incompetence. He became both feared and respected by many of his pilots and hated by the malingerers. He asked more from his aircraft maintainers and crews than anyone had imagined was possible, and he was responsible for demanding and getting record tonnages delivered to China. First 10,000 tons a month and then almost 24,000 tons. He was also responsible for a period of terrible Hump accidents. He admitted that setting new delivery records was more important than bothersome safety procedures. During just one 7-month stretch during his tenure, there were 135 major accidents and 168 of his crew were lost. Half of them night flying crashes, since he had initiated after-dark flying over the Hump, saying, "Airplanes don't need a sleep." At one point, every 1,000 tons flown into China cost 3 American lives. He lasted just 13 months. Still, during 1944, the Hump flights grew exponentially in terms of tonnage, organization, and operational sophistication. It became quite simply the world's biggest international airline. 750 aircraft and more than 4,400 pilots. Between August 1944 and October 1945, the Hump delivered almost 500,000 tons of material from India to China. However, Chiang Kai-shek got less than 2,000 tons of it, only 3 pounds for every 100 that crossed the Hump. The 20th Air Force got gasoline and ordnance. Chiang all too often got wine, decorative shrubbery for his house, ping-pong tables, office supplies, and condoms and such. The final report stated that the airlift expended 594 aircraft, so many that they left a trail of aluminium over the mountains. At least 468 American and 41 CNAC aircraft were lost from various causes, with 1,314 air crewmen and passengers killed. In addition, 81 aircraft were never accounted for, with their 345 personnel listed as missing. Another 1,200 were rescued or walked out of the mountains on their own. The flight time in the airlift totaled over 1.5 million hours, and at the time, the India-China ferry was the largest and most extensive strategic air bridge in aviation history, a testament to those who took part. Their final commander, General Tunner, who went on to command the American contribution to the Berlin airlift, stated, Never in the history of transportation had any community been supplied such a large proportion of its needs by air, even in the heart of civilization over friendly terrain. After the hump, those of us who had developed an expertise in air transportation knew that we could fly anything, anywhere, anytime.
I thought flying the hump was flying the 747.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, flying when you're you feeling a bit angry.
Wow, great! Another great story told by the old pilot, and wow, I'd heard that it was quite an arduous task to be a part of that whole operation, but it was much worse than I thought.
Yeah, I mean the losses, just incredible number of losses, and it was these guys were flying on reduced pay scales because they were considered non-combatants. Yet they were, losing hundreds upon hundreds of aircraft, killing well over 1,000 guys. I'm going, what? What were they thinking? But the ATC formed the basis, I think, of the Air Force's Strategic Air Command ability to move things. So I guess it was the start of the outfit you flew for, Jeff.
Yeah, I had no idea that they had anything to do with that at all. So, yeah, part of my heritage, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you, Nick, as always, for putting together another great plane tale.
Yeah, welcome.
All right. Moving on with our feedback. Steve, is this Steve Horn again? Yes, it is. Captain Steve. Send us a link to, you've heard of, was it Captain Roger Victor?
That's the guy. The puppet?
Yeah. The puppet, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The puppet Muppet captain guy. Well, he has made another appearance on the Airline Pilot Guy show. I'll play a little bit of this.
Traffic. Let me tell you a story what just happened now. I flew into Rochester, New York, and I made a smooth landing. Approach was smooth.
I'm going to do this before I play this because I actually made an audio version of this, and I took out some of the somewhat offensive language. So let me play. Since I went to all the trouble of doing this, I might as well play the audio clip that I prepared. So here we go.
Let me tell you a story what just happened now. I flew into Rochester, New York, and I made a smooth landing. Approach was smooth. Touchdown was smooth. As we're rolling down the runway, air traffic control gets on the radio. Speed tape, Airlines 237. Could you make the next high speed for a landing aircraft? And I said, sure, no problem. So I applied more brakes. I slammed on the brakes. Full reversers. That's my reverser sound. And we stopped and cleared the runway. Now, taxi to the gate, all hunky-dory, park, get the jet bridge connected, and a passenger feels the need to walk up to the flight deck and tell me what they thought, as if I gave it. He says, hey, who did the landing? And I said, that was me. I did the landing. He says, well, you had it at the beginning, but lost it in the end. What happened there? And I fought the urge to punch him in the mouth. I thought about it, the pros and the cons of punching a passenger in the mouth. And it came down to the fact that I did not want to follow that paperwork, passenger reports, incident report. I didn't want to deal with that. So instead of punching him, I just looked at him and I said, sir, are you in Rochester? He goes, yeah. Are you on the ground? Yeah. Are you safe? Yeah. Well, then I didn't lose a thing. Welcome to Rochester. Get off my plane. And he deplaned. I didn't ask for his opinion. I didn't need his opinion. If he thinks he could do my job better, he should have told me before, and I could have gone home. If you think you could do our jobs better, let us know. Otherwise, sit down, shut up, and enjoy the ride. That's right. Tell me your story about the stupidest thing a passenger ever said to you. I want to know. Make my day brighter. Have a happy Monday and a great week. Bye.
Well, Captain RV, heard a lot of stupid things said by passengers, but I usually just let it roll off my back. And
What do they say? The customer is always right.
yeah,
Well, they're not, but when
No.
you're, it's a question of maintaining your job and not being fired for having a sarcastic, witty, crude comeback. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just smile and.
no, I have a feeling that Captain Roger Victor may be embellishing his experiences just a tad bit.
Nah.
After all, he is really a puppet, not a real person.
This is true.
But at least we don't have to go and say goodbye to our customers at the end of the flight.
That's true. That's an advantage of the situation that you have over ours. But yeah, sometimes it's tough. Sometimes when you do something, you prang one on or whatever, you clear the runway quickly because you're trying to help the person out behind you, landing behind you. You just have to kind of just suck it up. And as I've mentioned before on this show, I try to use some humor in it. And I'll usually make some kind of an announcement that kind of deflects some of the comments that I might get from folks. And
Yeah, I tried that once when landing in the old days into Lagos. They had, before they resurfaced the runway surface was incredibly rough. And no matter how smooth you put it down, the rollout, you were going to be bouncing up and down like nobody's business. So I made a bit of a joke on the PA and apologized and hoped that nobody had lost their false teeth.
And somebody had false teeth, obviously.
But of course, I had insulted this marvelous Nigerian airfield, and there were a lot of Nigerians on board who were just so upset. I mean, they wouldn't accept the fact this was a lousy airfield. In fact, just appalling in every way, and the runway surface was the problem. They just thought I'd insulted their entire country, and I basically hid on the flight deck for a very long time.
I'm not going to say that again. Humor can be kind of a difficult thing. You're not, it's hard to know your audience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I don't use humor anymore.
I do. I'm usually able to get away with it.
Yeah, well,
I don't use it at work anymore.
You're close enough to retirement that you can.
No,
use
I mean,
it.
I've used it all my 30 years, Dana, and it's never it's only backfired once or twice. But
well, I think to answer this question, I think the unspoken word is the word that hurts the most. I don't think passengers, when they get off the aircraft, when you have I know, Nick, you don't have to stand there and do it, but I prefer to stand there, and it is in our policy manual to go ahead and stand there and say goodbye to everybody as everybody's getting off the aircraft. And you say, thank you, appreciate flying with us, have a nice day, whatever I happen to be saying. And a person looks at you and or doesn't even have the courtesy of looking at you and just walks off the aircraft and doesn't even ever acknowledge your existence. I think that's more offensive to me than just people saying that was the worst landing. I need to go see my chiropractor. So that's my pet peeve, is the unspoken word. When people are just rude, don't even acknowledge you.
yeah, but I guess I'm so used to that now. It doesn't offend me anymore. But a lot of antisocial people out there, that's for sure. And Ivor, I do worry about you, sir. He said that he thinks that Captain RV is a very handsome puppet.
Yeah.
Well, he is.
Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I kind of worry about you now.
Fair enough. Moving on.
All right. Let's see. Thanks, Steve, for submitting that link for us. Josh, a new listener, writes, I've only been listening for a few weeks, but already have the syndrome. Thanks for putting together such an excellent podcast. I have to say, I always look forward to Captain Nick's Plane Tales, and I'm slightly jealous of the fact he once flew the elegant and beautiful A340-600.
And still do.
I was going to say, do you have something to tell us?
No.
Well, Nick doesn't know yet, but we'll.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
You've got advance warning of my. Oh
I
dear.
am
Oh,
HR.
We all know now, Nick. You're the
Sorry
last
to
one.
inform you.
I'm
No,
usually
we-
the last one to find out.
No, we know nothing of the sort.
That's a good one. Regarding the recent Convair CV340 crash in South Africa, the pilots flying the aircraft were actually Australians. Both are very experienced A380 captains. Well, there you go. With Acme Red Kangaroo. I know both of them and have flown with one, Doug, on multiple occasions on the now retired RAAF DHC-4 Caribou aircraft. Both pilots survived the accident but face a long recovery. The flight engineer and several people on the ground unfortunately lost their lives. A video of the accident filmed by a passenger has been released to the media this week, and I think last show we played
Yes, we did.
Analysis of this video may help explain why the aircraft was unable to continue flight on one engine. A friend who is also a very senior airline captain and former RAAF pilot suggested the following based on analysis of the videos available and previous Convair incidents. Quote, he's quoting now from this guy. Maybe a disruption in water methanol, it was a wet takeoff, caused detonation and therefore cylinder failure. A disruption in water methanol supply with the wet takeoff manifold pressure set causes detonation. Different power settings are used for wet and dry takeoffs. Raw fuel was likely then going into the exhaust augmenter area, resulting in a magnesium fire. They don't go out. Augmenter fire has then burnt through the left aileron cables, causing the aileron upfloat, seen in the video, and making a right turn on the base leg, then being flown. Very difficult and causing uncommanded left roll. The video has sounds of power being increased and decreased, maybe to control the angle of bank. Augmenter fires are a known Convair problem. The aircraft appears to have impacted at about 160 knots. This is all speculation, of course, but it does seem very similar to previous incidents. And he has some links below on some previous incidents of the Convair 340. And if that is what has occurred here, the crew did a very good job of keeping it airborne and upright for as long as they did. No doubt their actions saved the lives of most of those on board. Keep up the good work. Best regards, Josh. Thank you, Josh, for your input on this. And it's very cool that members of our community actually know some people that are associated with some of the things that we talk about on the show. And, you know, as we said in our analysis, quote unquote, air quotes, of the accident based on what we know and what we've seen in videos and everything else, you know, we're just kind of speculating out our wazoos. And we don't know for sure. We weren't there. But that's an interesting speculation by the former RAAF pilot. What do you guys think?
It seemed to have happened very quickly. It wasn't really a very long incident from start to finish. I don't know how long it takes for a magnesium fire to take hold and then cut through the control cables, but just from first impressions, it would perhaps not seem quite long enough for that all to happen. However, his explanation of why we were seeing those intermittent flames out of the back of the engine, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Steph, any thoughts?
No, I just was reading back up. Do you say he actually did know both of the pilots?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, certainly, yeah, just thinking of them and their families and hoping for a speedier recovery than they're anticipating. So
yes, please do convey to them, if you get a chance to talk to them sometime during their long recovery or after, please give our regards from the APG crew and APG community that, you know, we hope that they recover quickly and that, well, I don't know what else to say, but yeah.
back to work and flying at some point in the not too distant future.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on with Tariq. Hello, APG crew. Last week, the instructor who signed off the very first flight in my logbook over 11 years ago and went on to teach me how to fly passed away in an accident. It was devastating to me, so I wrote a piece, which I have read out loud for you. this audio feedback is a little long and talks a little bit about the reality of general aviation when it comes to safety and what we need to be thinking about when we lose a close friend. Love the show. Happy flying. And here we go.
Hello, APG crew. Tarek Merryface here. It's a bit of a long audio, but hopefully Liz won't chuck it out because it's something that a lot of pilots think about and only speak about it when unfortunate things happen. And something unfortunate happened recently, which affected me quite deeply. So I wrote a piece about it, and I wanted to share it with you. So here goes. I have been flying since 2007, but it's only been since 2015, since I left university and got back to my flight training, that I finally got myself fully immersed in the industry, having spent a year flight instructing and now doing survey work. As a pilot, you tend to think you understand the inherent risks of general aviation. After all, the safeguards that make airline travel so safe aren't there, such as multi-pilot crews, stringent maintenance, and most importantly, intense emergency training on a regular basis. Nevertheless, it's still a shock when the death of someone you know occurs. The first time I found out about a flight instructor I knew who died, I was actually at a job interview for the very flight school he was working for. I met John 2 years prior when I was doing my flight instructor training. He was very well respected and loved by all. The weather was borderline VMC, and so my check flight with the chief pilot had been cancelled, but 2 aircraft were coming in from another of the school's bases for maintenance. The first aircraft to depart was a Piper PA-28, and it was being piloted by John and his students. The second aircraft, a Cessna 152, was being flown by 2 ex-students of the school, who are now both active commercial pilots. The alarm bells rang when the 152 landed, but there was still no sign of the Piper aircraft, which should have arrived earlier. The phones at the flight school began to ring, and a somber mood quickly enveloped the building. Eventually, a representative from NATS, the National Air Traffic Service, came into the flight school and pulled the manager into a quiet room to talk to her privately. 5 minutes later, she came out crying. Being responsible for the school, however, she needed to jump into action. Calls had to be made, journalists would soon be making contact, and reports had to be filed. The plane had gone down, and it seemed that neither of the occupants had survived. The 2 commercial pilots stood to the side, speaking in low voices. They had been supposed to sit in the back of another aircraft flown by the missing instructor and student in order to get back home. I decided to act at this point. It was clear that everyone was incredibly busy and in emotional distress, so I took it upon myself to take the 2 commercial pilots back home, despite the fact that it was a 2-hour drive in the opposite direction of my house. It was the least I could do in the dire circumstances. As we drove, we contemplated on what would happen next. We thought about their families. The student was a foreign national. We thought about the shock and grief his family would feel upon hearing the news of his death, just when he was finally achieving his dreams. We thought about John's wife, a woman who was fiercely dependent on him. We also thought about his mother, whom he had picked up from a major airport earlier that day. He had dropped her off at his house before going to work. Little did she know she would never see her son again. This tragedy unsettled me deeply. I didn't feel the personal grief that those around me felt, but I did feel a sense of shock and uncertainty. John was a well-respected instructor, known for his attention to detail and his unforgiving safety precautions. A man who had made instructing his career. If he couldn't get through a career of flying GA aircraft safely, who could? Maybe I should quit flying, I thought. It took me a long time to recover from this shock. I never flew for that school in the end, as I got offered a more attractive position as a survey pilot. But the thought that flying small aircraft isn't as safe as I've always felt still lingers to this day. About 6 months after John's unfortunate demise, I found out that my PPL instructor passed away after his aircraft hit the ground on takeoff when he was flying with a student. The man who had taught me how to fly, who once spent 2 hours of his personal time helping me prepare for the ICAO English radio telephony exam, and who had always encouraged my passion for flying, was gone. One of my biggest role models, lost forever. He left behind a wife and 2 children, and countless adoring friends and students. To me, Frank was a mentor. He was the type of instructor who just understood his students' needs. He, unlike many instructors, including myself, never over-explained things. He showed you just the bare minimum, and then sat next to you and watched quietly and contently as you learned to fly by yourself. He would answer questions and stop you from doing anything dangerous, but he was a firm believer of learning by doing. Frank was quiet and good-natured. He was also a safe pilot in my eyes, and that of many others. His accident, still fresh in my mind and heart, is puzzling, incomprehensible. When you read a detached, impersonal accident report, it's easy to see where a pilot goes wrong. This time, though, it could be more personal. I was blind. I guess I still am. Was it a mechanical error? Was Frank fatigued? Maybe if I had been in the flight school. Pointless, meaningful, harmless questions. This time, although unsettled, I understand and accept the tragedy, even if I grieve for the loss of a friend and mentor. I hate it when people use someone's death as a life lesson. We should accept that sometimes tragic things happen, and we should just simply grieve and move on. In aviation, however, this sort of thinking is unacceptable, and so we learn. Flying general aviation aircraft is not as safe as we pilots like to believe, or perhaps even delude ourselves into believing. We fly because we love it, because it's our livelihood, or because it is who we are. In my short career so far, I've heard of many deaths in general aviation, all of which happen to, I quote, good pilots. We are good pilots, until today we are not, and the fates decide to be unforgiving. I certainly remember making stupid and dangerous decisions, which I regret. And if a pilot tells you that has never happened to them, then they are either lying, or they have never left the traffic pattern of their local airport. I don't want to die in an airplane accident. The safest thing for me to do, therefore, is to stop flying. But I can't, because like John, and like Frank, flying is also part of who I am. All I can do is always ensure that I make the safest decisions, and never break my personal code of conduct that defines to me what a safe pilot is. This, hopefully, will keep me safe. The death of our friends is a somber reminder that what we are doing is dangerous. We are defying the laws of physics, and that we, the human being, are the best weapons against such tragedy. In the memory of those who die flying, never stop learning, never ease up on safety, and continue in your passion of flight. Apologies for the long feedback, APG crew. I love the show. Take care and happy flying.
Thank you so much for that sober reminder that, well, aviation is not without its risks, but neither is life.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and everything is calculated risks versus benefits. I think the benefit we all get from flying outweigh the potential risks. And, you know, he summed it up pretty nicely. I don't need to elaborate too much, but the way to mitigate those risks is to always, you know, have a healthy respect for what it is that you're doing and the equipment that you're working with and the people you're engaging in the activity with, and always continue learning to be the safest pilot, or, you know, whatever the activity is, that you have up-to-date knowledge and training to mitigate all those risks. But yeah, it's always, you know, it's always tragic when things like that happen, especially, you know, accidents, because of their unexpected nature. They come about suddenly. It's hard to take, hard to process. And you can't help but have a little bit of that feeling of, what would I have done in that scenario if it were me? Would the outcome have been any different? And that's hard to deal with, I think, on an emotional level.
And it's especially difficult when you have a personal connection with somebody who has lost their life.
Yep.
Yep. Well put, Steph.
Good news I have for all of us in the chat room. We have some news regarding the crash that we had talked about earlier in the show that was occurring while we were recording today's show, the E175.
E190.
Or E190, thank you. Looks like the governor of Durango on his Twitter account confirmed that there are no dead amongst the 97 passengers and 4 crew members on board, but up to 85 are injured. And I also saw something about the fact that they attempted to abort their takeoff because of bad weather, but I guess it was an excursion beyond the end of the runway, and that's why they ended up crashing. But of course, we'll know more as the investigation continues.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I've been following along on Twitter here, both Aeromexico's Twitter account and then some of the officials in Mexico. And that all looks to be up-to-date information.
Okay. Well, good. I mean, it's not good that people were injured, but it's good that no fatalities as of yet. So
correct.
All right. I don't know if you all saw this video. I saw this a few weeks ago. Ham Radio Jim writes in and says, how about this? No comment. The video speaks for itself. And he has a link to a YouTube video showing an Emirates A380 taking off from an island. Was it Mauritius? Is that the way you pronounce that?
Yeah, that would be correct.
I don't know about you, but when I saw this at first, I'm thinking, I don't know. It looks kind of like there's something about the quality of the video that doesn't look real to me. Almost looks like one of those flight simulation kind of videos that you see. Did you guys have a chance to look at it?
I've just seen a couple still shots here and there, but that's about it.
Yeah, the airplane almost looks like it looks too
Photoshopped.
perfect.
It looks
too clean.
computer generated.
Yeah. And then I read some other places that said if you look at the waves in some of the video, they don't look like they're moving the right way. I don't know. People are like analyzing the heck out of this, but I think that if this were an incident where a drone was slightly off the departure path of this A380 taking off from this island, that there would have been more news about it, like on the Aviation Herald or whatever. Maybe there is. I don't know. Maybe I didn't see it, but I think it's fake personally. But if it's not, then whoever's flying the drone is an idiot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I'll
we'll
agree with that.
take that for granted. Yeah, the drone seems to move quite rapidly across towards the flight path as well of the aircraft. I'm thinking, and it doesn't quite look like it's it's more stable than it should be.
Mhm.
So I'm a bit with you, and certainly some of the stills, you look at yourself, well, that airplane does not look real.
Yeah, there's a point where it's kind of coming up to a beam position of the drone, and you see the sun glint as it goes across the top of the fuselage of the 380, and it was like it's almost too perfect. I'm thinking, no,
Yeah.
I don't think that it would look like that.
I think it might be a flight simulator.
Yeah, it does look like one of those flight simulator programs. Anyway, but hey, good effort by whomever produced the thing, I guess. We're getting close to the end of our show. I think we're getting around the 2:45 mark. Just quickly looking at those items that are still in our feedback folder. We're going to do our best to knock out as many as we can. I think I'll push this particular item, number 15, to the next show because it involves some audio, and I think we can have a pretty good discussion about this. And I don't think we have enough time on today's show to discuss it in a manner that is, the appropriate for our show. So we'll table that for the next episode. And I think that also this one, number 16, the transition from military to civilian flying, again, that might lead into a longer discussion. So I'm going to hit number 17. I think we can quickly talk about this one. Ralph writes, an Ohio man called in a bomb threat so he would not miss his United Airlines flight. And there's a link to this from apple.news. And Ralph Walker says, I think he got away cheap. So the article goes on to say, Ohio man called in bomb threat so he would not miss his flight. And now he is going to jail, according to the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky, or no, I'm sorry. There must be a photo here of this Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. That's where he called the bomb threat in, or at least that's where the flight was departing. He called the bomb threat in because he was afraid that he was going to miss his flight. And he was sentenced on Thursday to 4 months in prison and ordered to pay a fine. Dana, there you go. The guy's name's Dana.
Perfect.
Typical.
What else can you say there? Dana Carter of Dayton made a series of calls to the airport claiming there was a bomb on the Dallas, Texas-bound United Airlines flight in October, I guess last year. The 40-year-old allegedly made the false reports because he was worried he was going to miss the flight. Oh, I must have said something that...
Siri. Hey, Siri.
Hi, Siri.
Hi, Siri. You said
Thank you.
bomb and she got excited.
Thank you, Siri. Darn it. Let's see. So they ended up canceling the flight because of the bomb threat. So yay. It had the effect he was looking for, apparently. Oh, no, actually not. He was hoping to make the flight, but it was canceled because of his false report. And his attorney admitted the false threat was a foolish act. And in addition to the jail time, he is ordered to pay $7,700 in restitution to United Airlines for the canceled flight. And he's also going to be on federal probation for 3 years. And as Ralph said, I don't think that I think he got away pretty cheaply there. I think that he deserved a greater fine and more jail time, actually.
Yeah, that's one of those things that you just don't joke about ever.
Nope.
No.
And this wasn't even a joke so much as he really just didn't want to miss his flight. So for some reason, he thought this would be a way to delay it. I mean, that's just really poor judgment.
Very poor judgment. I mean, he didn't miss his flight.
He did not.
Although the flight didn't operate.
But everyone else did.
Yeah. So, yeah. Dumb.
Indeed.
Oh, you know what? I just realized I skipped number 14. I did not mean to skip this one.
Oh, okay.
Derek, I don't know if you had a chance to meet Derek at the Sarson Stones.
I think I've met everyone. I hope I met Derek.
Yeah, I think you met Derek. He's a wonderful guy. He says, hi, guys. Derek from the UK, Sussex here. Just a quick bit of feedback. So pleased to finally meet you all at the Farnborough meetup at the Sarson Stones. It was a great night, and we agree. 2 years ago, I missed the meetup due to traffic congestion getting out of the air show. Hope all of your journeys home were as smooth as possible. Thanks for all your hard work in making the show so successful, and look forward to meeting up again, hopefully in 2 years' time. Derek. And as I said, Derek,
thanks.
it was a pleasure meeting you, and I'm glad you had a good time and look forward to meeting up with you again.
Absolutely.
Glad the traffic god smiled upon you this time.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah,
The traffic did seem a bit smoother this time around, didn't it? In general,
it did. It
Maybe
seems
was
like
better managed.
I think they put a little bit more thought into managing the traffic this time. Unlike Riyadh, right, Nick?
Oh, well, we couldn't even get out of the car park. That was the problem. Once we got out of the car park, we were fine. But
yeah, that was
I don't know how many thousand cars suddenly descended en masse to one exit point, and guess what's going to happen? If you're at the back of the queue like we were,
yeah, it was hot, and it was just it was not a good situation. But I can't think of two people I'd rather be in a car for 2 hours waiting to get out of a parking lot though than Nick and Nigel.
two blokes bickering for 2
And
hours.
singing. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a
yeah.
different time, though. The
Oh,
singing
well.
thing. Yeah.
They should have asked for more
We
singing.
weren't in a singing mood. I can
I
tell you
see.
that.
Might have made the
sure.
time go by faster.
There's actually
Sure,
more to the
Nick
story
was-
than that.
I'm sure Nick was real hot under the collar.
I was trying to keep my cool. Everyone else was making smart comments about which way we should be going, but we were
I was
more or
not
less
saying a thing. I
we
was
were
just-
more or less stuck.
Yes, we were. Anyway. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for 334.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Get
Nick,
to bed. Hooray!
thanks for staying up so late. What time is it now for you?
Midnight.
It's only midnight, actually.
Oh,
it's
it's not
just
too
that I woke real early this morning, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Well, I thank you. We all thank you for hanging in there with us. I know it's not
Hey, no
optimum
problem.
for you to do it this late in the day, but this was just the
Fabulous.
best opportunity for us to do the show this week, and I'm glad it worked out. And
Certainly.
thank you, Dana, for taking time out of your layover, and Steph for taking time out of your day to join me to do the show. And all of you in the live chat room, thanks a lot for joining us today. We really appreciate your support. And speaking of support, if you want to support us financially, again, that's the coffee fund, airlinepilotguide.com/coffee. The website is a great place for you to go to learn more about the show. We have apps for iOS and Android, information about that on the website as well. And we're on social media, right, Steph?
We are. We are on Twitter. You can point your browser over to twitter.com, and we are at APG Crew. Interact with all of us there and find our individual Twitter information pinned to the top of that page. You can also head over to facebook.com/airline pilot guy, interact with community members there. You can post links to aviation related things, engage in conversation, sometimes learn about meetup opportunities, and generally have a nice time.
Absolutely. And we're also on Slack.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel, for that. And hope everybody has a great week, and look forward to seeing you again next time on the Airline Pilot Guy Show. I'm wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Goodbye, everybody.
Oh,
Adios.
Dana is frozen.
Frozen.
He's having trouble with his bandwidth, so I guess we can always
He's
just
frozen doing a dance by the looks of it.
Wow. He's like this.
Yeah, that's right.
Video.
What's he doing?
You know, just adjusting
The birdie
t-shirts.
dance or something. Right.
Oh,
I like
right.
that.
That was fun.
Good.
Yeah, as always. And just in time for me to go on a run, it appears to be raining.
Oh,
Yay.
no.
Sorry.
Well, you run in the
Better
rain
than,
anyway,
it's
don't
better
you?
than running in the heat.
Yeah. What do you do about wet shoes?
They get wet.
Okay.
You mean like after you're done running?
Yeah, like
so they dry out.
yeah,
You stuff new-
after the
stuff newspapers in them.
put newspapers in them.
Mhm.
Okay, and that soaks all the wicks all the water out of them.
It does. It helps them dry a little faster.
Okay, and then so you don't like throw them in the dryer or anything like that.
No, you're not really supposed to do that. It kind of
Oh.
warps the material.
I was just wondering about that because I've gone out on run/walks in the past and gotten caught out in a rain. I don't know what the
Rainstorm.
rainstorm, deluge, and soaking wet shoes. I'm thinking, okay, well, that's pretty much it for these shoes.
Oh no, they dry.
Okay,
And usually I'll leave them outside in a place where they're not going to get wet, if possible. or in
Yeah.
the garage or something.
Get some air.
And I actually have multiple copies of the same shoe.
What's your
multiple pairs,
favorite?
multiple
What's your
pairs.
shoe of choice?
Right now, it's the Adidas Boston Boost.
Adidas Boston Boost.
Yeah.
Hey, Dana.
Hi, Jeff.
It's not that bad. You had great major contributions to the show, so we do thank you for
Except
that.
for sounding like an idiot with a cumulonimbus.
Really?
Yeah. I couldn't come up with that word that I wanted to come up with. And
Well, what did you ever come up with it?
no, because I completely
I couldn't help you. I
forgot
didn't
what
know
I
what the word you were looking for
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
No, I
I
didn't
just-
either. I wasn't sure where you're trying to go. That
Yeah.
happens to me all the time. Don't worry about it.
It's all right. It's okay. C'est la vie.
C'est la vie. Que
C'est
sera,
la
sera.
vie.
All right.
Hi, Nick. Hi to the doggies.
Woof woof, they're all in bed. No, sensible dogs.
Yes, they are sensible. That was a great time.
Unlike their owner.
Thank you, Nick, for hosting us and for such a long time. That was that was
I
awesome.
enjoyed it immensely. We ended up with an awful lot of food and drink, which I've been doing manfully trying to consume.
Oh, that's nice.
But,
Oh, it's nice of you because the food was fantastic that you,
Yeah, it was.
that you provided.
And I see that Nige mentioned somewhere that he was enjoying the last flagship IPA.
He's such a tart, isn't he?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that man?
Anyway, Nige, if you're still there, thank you so much for your hospitality. We had a
Yeah, the
great
only
time.
thing I've got your gift to him. So I said, if you don't bring me my dozen bottles of Shipyard, I'm going to keep Jeff's gift.
So you're going to keep the gift that I gave to Nigel?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, unless he pitches up pretty soon with a dozen bottles of Shipyard or whatever that stuff was called.
You never know. You never know.
He might surprise you.
Yeah.
He might, but I know him quite well.
That's
Yeah,
true.
you do.
You do.
Okay,
No
folks.
denying.
Go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry. I
I
interrupted
said there's
you.
no denying that he knows.
No denying.
Although I'm sad I didn't get to meet Nigel in person.
Oh, you should have. You would have enjoyed meeting him. He was a wonderful man.
Well, I'll look forward to it next time then.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
That's if
both.
that's if in 2 years we're invited back because we may be banned.
What, just from the UK in general?
Yeah, in general.
Okay.
Yeah, once Brexit's there, we're going to ban lots of people, I think.
Uh-oh, Dana. I just got a text from Flight Operations. A critical operations update has been issued for the ATL IROP.
Oh, jeez.
Broken rotations may take 60 to 90 minutes to fix. Probably a lot longer than
Is that an email?
It's a text.
Main man Micah.
Probably an email as well. Hello,
there it
main
is.
man Micah. And Josine, we're still waiting for our next lesson.
Yes,
You
we
only gave
are.
us the one.
Yeah, I know. It was great fun, but we enjoyed the quiz enormously.
We want more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to everybody in the chat room, thanks for hanging out with us today. We do appreciate it. Well, I need to shut this thing down and start
I have to
packing
go to
for my
bed.
trip.
Yeah, I got to be up at 3:35.
Oh, you need to
tomorrow
get
morning.
something to eat and get some sleep.
I'm not going to eat, so that's easy.
Well, that's right. Okay, well, get some sleep then.
I'm going to get some sleep.
All right, Dana. Thanks for
All
being
the
with
best,
us
mate.
in your labor.
Well done.
Likewise.
Hang on in there.
Great to see
You made it.
everybody.
Woohoo.
We
With
made
your
it.
flashy lights.
Flashing light. Yeah,
Yeah, what's going? Is that your camera or the light? Actually,
It's a camera. I think it's because I'm wearing a white T-shirt. See?
It can't figure out
okay.
the white balance.
And it's throwing the white balance out because the lighting here is terrible.
Oh, you know what? I don't know if you have the ability to like
I
turn
don't.
off the automatic white balance. I think
I don't think I do
Okay.
because this is a basic one.
You just the camera in the MacBook itself.
No, it's a Logitech.
Okay, so you can download this piece of software called Webcam Settings that gives you control over that, I believe.
Okay, I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's like $10, $9.99 or something like that on the App Store, and on the first
Well,
page.
this is the first time it's ever happened. So
Yeah, well, never mind. You probably don't have to worry about it. That's the
yeah,
first
it's just
time
me
I've
wearing
ever
my.
noticed it.
It's me being too lazy and not putting on another T-shirt.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it wasn't I mean, it's an audio show anyway, so who
Could
cares?
provide a nice contrast to the background there. That's kind of dark. So
See,
That's true.
Well, that's a mirror I covered up behind me.
yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. I didn't want the mirror reflecting me back in my head.
Mirror,
Thank
mirror
you.
on the wall.
All right,
Maybe
guys.
like that
Thank-
time that there
All
were
right.
like 100 nicks on the screen with the camera.
Exactly.
I must do that again someday. I enjoyed that.
Yes.
That was funny.
All right, I'm
Okay.
going to stop the broadcast. Again, thanks everybody on the live show for hanging
Goodbye.
out with us.
Bye.
See you again
Bye,
next
bye,
time.
and bye,
Bye-bye.
Nige, who is watching us in the guest lounge. Whee! On the big
Yay.
screen. Whee!
Oh boy.
You can see all of